Chapter 68. Lung Shiqi sensed that the strength of these lion-shaped puppets was equivalent to a spirit cultivator at the 9th level of the spirit-gathering realm, and the items that dropped were of no use to him at the pure spirit realm. Thus, he also locked his gaze on the taller ape-shaped puppets. Shui Wuhai and Lung Shiqi were not the only ones who had this idea. Almost all the spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm were the same. Yushu left behind 2 pure spirit realm cultivators, and then, together with Lung Shiqi, Hua Lingling and the others, they forcefully broke through the lion-shaped puppets and rushed towards the ape-shaped puppets. The spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm among the 19 forces immediately reacted. Immediately after, as many as 100 spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm tore open holes in the lion-shaped puppets and rushed them into a mess. However, they did not fight for the light balls that fell. These light balls were naturally left for the remaining spirit-gathering realm cultivators to fight for. And among the spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm, the leaders of the major forces were the fastest. Because they were basically all at the 4th level of the pure spirit realm, these lion-shaped puppets could not stop them at all. Shui Wuhai was still at the front, followed by Hen Qianshan, Meng Ming, Delta Origi, Yushu, and Lung Shiqi. The few of them were like a sharp knife that fiercely tore open a big hole and got rid of the lion-shaped puppets. However, at this time, these people suddenly stopped in their tracks. It was because the eyes of the ape-shaped puppets had also lit up. The difference was that they were shining with a blue light. And they all opened their mouths. Lung Shiqi and the others immediately stopped moving forward and carefully guarded, afraid that these ape-shaped puppets would shoot arrows like the lion-shaped puppets. Roar! The dozens of ape-shaped puppets did not shoot arrows, but instead roared out deafening roars. Many ape-shaped puppets roared at the same time, and waves of invisible sound waves rippled out. Lung Shiqi and the others hurriedly circulated their spirit energy to resist, and only then did they feel better. These roars did not have much of an effect on them, but it was different for the spirit-gathering realm cultivators. Originally, it was rather easy for the thousands of spirit cultivators of the spirit assembly realm to surround and kill the lion puppet. First of all, they had a huge advantage in terms of numbers. Furthermore, the over 300 lion-shaped puppets had already been scattered by the spirit cultivator S of the pure spirit realm. Basically, it was 3 or 4 people dealing with a single lion-shaped puppet. There was no pressure at all. However, the sound waves from the dozens of ape-shaped puppets suddenly reverberated, catching all of the spirit-gathering cultivators off guard. Some of them even froze on the spot. Blood splattered everywhere in the crowd. Chaos ensued. After a short delay, the spirit cultivator S of the pure spirit realm also rushed out and gathered together in groups of 3 or 5. At this moment, dozens of ape puppets had already pounced over. On this side, more than 100 spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm did not show any weakness. Instead, they took the initiative to charge forward. The 6 people from Lung Shiqi's side were divided into 4 groups. Hua Lingling and Qi Shui were in a group of 2, while Lung Shiqi and Yushu were in a group of 1. Lung Shiqi's feet moved continuously. His figure was as fast as the wind as he stuck close to the ape puppet side and immediately punched out. Roar! The fist landed on the side of the ape puppet's ribs and actually let out a tiger's roar. It was the howling tiger fist. However, what surprised Lung Shiqi was that his howling tiger fist, which was at the great perfection stage, only left a small fist-sized hole in the ape puppet's body. So hard! Lung Shiqi was secretly shocked. The ape puppet did not feel anything at all. It waved its arm and smashed down heavily. This time, Lung Shiqi did not dodge. With a thought, his hands turned into pitch-black ghost claws. He did not dodge or give way, and forcibly received the attack. Chi! Lung Shiqi only felt a powerful force attacking him. Although he had already prepared for it, he was still repelled. His feet drew a long mark in the wetland. Lung Shiqi clenched his somewhat numb hands and thought, this ape puppet's casual attack is so strong, and at the same time, it is not afraid of being injured at all. I'm afraid its comprehensive strength is not weaker than the black-haired bear, but their weakness is also the same, their speed is too slow. Thinking of this, Leng Shiqi naturally knew what to do. He immediately used the 100 Ghosts Night Parade, and a layer of faint black mist wrapped around his feet. Under the cover of the black cloak, it was almost impossible to see. With a zing sound, the third-rank spirit sword was unsheathed. He took a step forward and instantly jumped out. At this time, the ape puppet swung its fist down. Leng Shiqi suddenly turned his body halfway and just happened to avoid the punch. At the same time, Leng Shiqi's spirit sword moved continuously, leaving a few deep sword marks on the ape puppet's back. Because his current identity was Dark Crow, during the whole process, Leng Shiqi did not use the confusing footwork and sword art spiritual skill. However, with only the basic sword art and the sharpness of the third-rank spirit sword, it did not take long for the ape puppet to be cut into pieces. Fortunately, these ape puppets did not have intelligence. If they were monsters, he would not be so relaxed. Then, Leng Shiqi picked up the light ball that fell on the ground, crushed it, and took out a rank 1 cultivation technique. Leng Shiqi did not even look at it. He directly stuffed it into his arms and continued to look for the next target. Not only Leng Shiqi, as long as it was a spirit cultivator above the 4th level of the pure spirit realm, sooner or later, they would get rid of an ape puppet, but the things they obtained did not seem to be very satisfactory. However, it was still better than the things dropped by the lion-type puppet. As this group of people found their targets again, the number of ape puppets was gradually decreasing. On the other side, although the spirit cultivators of the spirit gathering realm had just been caught off guard, they quickly reacted and supported each other, stabilizing the situation. There were even a few scattered spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm who came to the front to support. Slowly, whether it was the lion-type puppet or the ape puppet, they were all retreating. When there was only about half of the ape puppet left, the 10 humanoid puppets at the back woke up. The 10 humanoid puppets had different lights in their eyes. They raised their arms one after another with their palms facing outwards. In the next moment, fireballs, wind blades, ice thorns, water bullets, cut through the sky and quickly flew into the crowd. Ah! Save me, save me. A series of screams rose and fell. The fireballs smashed onto their bodies and began to burn crazily, unable to be extinguished. The ice thorns entered their bodies and their entire bodies gradually turned into ice. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and their eyes were more or less filled with shock. What is that? It seems to be a legendary spiritual skill. Is it a spirit mage? It should be a spirit mage puppet. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes as he glanced at the 10 spirit mage puppets. What they used just now must be a spiritual skill. Leng Shiqi himself also had a spiritual skill, which was the centipede curse. However, this spiritual skill did not have a direct attack. On the other hand, the spiritual skill that the spirit mage puppets had used just now had landed on the spirit cultivator's body. Even if they did not die, they would be crippled. He could not help but feel a sense of loss in his heart. Chapter 69. Yushu jumped to Leng Shiqi's side, pointed at the Soul Master puppets and said with a heavy expression, "Those things are too dangerous. We have to think of a way to get rid of them first." Leng Shiqi nodded and said, "That's right, but such a dangerous thing can't be done by us alone. We have to get a few helpers." Yushu understood and immediately shouted, Hey, I say brothers, we are all sensible people, let's work together to get rid of those human-shaped puppets first." After experiencing a round of arrow rain, the other 4 forces had more or less suffered some damage, and only the Yushu clan still maintained the highest battle strength. At this moment, Yushu had a very high right to speak. Many people agreed with his idea, but the various forces could not trust each other, and for a moment, everyone hesitated. However, just as they were hesitating, the 10 human-shaped puppets raised their hands again, and 10 spells blasted over again. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly dodged, but there were still 6 or 7 people who died on the spot. One of them was a new pure spirit realm cultivator from the Yushu clan. Yushu immediately grimaced. "What are you still hesitating for? Do you still want to be a live target here? Take advantage of the fact that they can't immediately attack again, gather the strongest battle strength and rush over." This time, no one hesitated anymore, and the leaders of the various forces stood out. 19 forces, 22 people stood out. These 22 people were all at the middle stage of the pure spirit realm. It could be said that they were the strongest group of people on the entire Blood Fog Island. Everyone did not need to trust each other, they just needed to rush over as soon as possible and get rid of the Soul Master puppets before the next spell was activated. Of course, they all had one goal, and that was that since the human-shaped puppets were so strong, their things would definitely be better. At this time, the ape-shaped puppets moved and actually protected the 10 Soul Master puppets behind them. Charge! Yushu shouted, and the 22 cultivators at the middle stage of the pure spirit realm moved. Lung Shichi and Yushu glanced at each other. Soon after, the two of them separated and went around from the side. Shui Wuhai was still leading the charge. His moves were large and powerful, and their might was shocking. He was most suited for charging and killing. He rushed over and fiercely stabbed his spear into the abdomen of the ape-shaped puppet, forcibly creating a large hole. Delta Origi followed closely behind. With a shake of her silver sword, she transformed into dozens of silver snakes that filled the sky, instantly leaving dozens of sword marks on the ape-shaped puppet. Hen Qianshan used a giant axe. He raised the axe high above his head, and the blade of the axe lit up with spiritual light. Boom! The giant axe fell, directly smashing the ape-shaped puppet's head into pieces. With the three of them working together, they actually managed to finish off an ape-shaped puppet in just a few moves. However, after the three of them exploded, they were somewhat lacking in stamina. But at this time, the people behind them took over. Meng Ming stretched out his arms and drew a ferocious fist blade from his sleeves. With a light leap, he leaped 3 meters away. He easily dodged the ape-shaped puppet's attack and cut off a large piece of wood from a strange angle. Zhang Zhiga, on the other hand, threw out a punch without any skill, but this punch knocked the ape-shaped puppet to the ground. Then, another 2 people attacked and killed another ape-shaped puppet. This group of people worked together and used their terrifying speed to kill one ape-shaped puppet after another, directly going deep into the group of puppets. However, they did not care about the ape-shaped puppets at all, because those puppets were all blocked by the dozens of pure spirit realm cultivators behind them. At this time, the hands of the 10 humanoid puppets began to gather different colored spiritual lights. However, there was still an ape-shaped puppet in front of everyone. At this moment, 2 figures rushed over from the left and right, and the moment they got close to the ape-shaped puppet, 2 saber lights that were like waterfalls slashed out at the same time. The saber lights formed a fork under the blood-colored sky, stunning everyone. And the ape-shaped puppet was instantly shattered into pieces. The 2 people who attacked were Lung Shichi and Yushu. They used Gale Slash at the same time to instantly kill the puppet. When the ape-shaped puppet fell to the ground, the 22 people successfully broke out of the puppet group in an extremely short period of time. However, the humanoid puppets had already raised their hands, and their spiritual techniques could be activated again at any time. Get out of the way! At this time, everyone could only choose to dodge. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! 10 spiritual techniques were released. One of the ice spikes was flying towards Lung Shichi. Lung Shichi's expression changed slightly. He had never had the experience of dealing with spiritual techniques, and he could not use the confusion footwork. At this critical moment, Lung Shichi could only kick out a few puppet fragments under his feet. The fragments collided with the ice spikes and were instantly frozen, then shattered into ice shards. Hiss! Lung Shichi saw this and secretly took a deep breath. He clearly did not expect the ice spikes to be so domineering. However, he could not help but be surprised because the ice spikes were already in front of him. Lung Shichi was quick-witted and quickly used the Hand of the Earth. The next moment, a door-sized earth wall rose from the ground and blocked the ice spikes. The Hand of the Earth was an intermediate prize. Lung Shichi had it for a long time and he had been constantly developing the Hand of the Earth. Today, after witnessing the true power of spiritual techniques, Lung Shichi seemed to have opened a new path and had a deeper understanding of the Hand of the Earth. Of course, Lung Shichi did not have time to think too much. Although the earth wall blocked the ice spikes, the bone-chilling cold still hit him. the cold entered his body and instantly made him feel cold. Not only his body, but even his meridians were aching. Lung Shiqi hurriedly circulated his spirit qi to expel the cold before he felt better. At the same time, he was secretly shocked. A small ice spike has such terrifying power. After a round of spiritual techniques, 3 of the spirit cultivators in the middle stage of the pure spirit realm died and a few were injured. Among the targets, only Lung Shiqi and Xue Wuhai were unharmed. Unfortunately, Lung Shiqi only cared about himself and did not pay attention to how Xue Wuhai blocked the spiritual techniques. At this time, everyone's heart moved and thought to themselves, "Opportunity, attack." Immediately, the remaining 19 people directly rushed towards the humanoid puppets. Among them, Xiongming's speed suddenly increased by a large margin. It was obvious that he also had a movement-type spiritual technique. Lung Shiqi used the ghost parade and caught up, only falling behind Xiongming. Bang bang! Lung Shiqi flew at top speed and slashed out a blade shadow, enveloping the humanoid puppet and turning it into a pile of fragments in the blink of an eye. At the same time, Xiongming also took care of a humanoid puppet in an instant. The human-shaped puppet's defense was far inferior to the ape-shaped puppets, and even the lion-shaped puppets. Lung Shiqi reached out and picked up a light ball and took out a small white bottle. There were 3 words written on it: Pure Spirit Pill. Chapter 70. The Pure Spirit Pill was a pill that could help spirit cultivators in the pure spirit realm quickly purify their spirit energy. A single pure spirit pill was equivalent to 10 days of bitter cultivation by Lung Shiqi. Moreover, the spirit energy obtained was very pure, unlike refining demon blood, which would cause one's foundation to be unstable. It was definitely a good thing. Lung Shiqi shook it lightly. There were actually 3 pure spirit pills inside, and he couldn't help but feel slightly happy. However, at this time, Lung Shiqi suddenly had a few doubts in his heart, and faintly felt that something was wrong. But for a moment, he couldn't figure out what was wrong. The others naturally saw that both Lung Shiqi and Xiongming had gained something, and they were all anxious in their hearts. After all, there were only 10 humanoid puppets, and there were nearly 20 of them. The third to arrive was Delta Origi. She had also forcefully used her confusion movement technique to rush over, and was as strong as a ball of light. Xue Wuhai, Yu Shu, and Hen Qianshan, who came later, all had gains. Just as the dozen or so people behind were about to take action, a sudden change occurred. Not far behind the humanoid puppets, the 3 giant puppets that were 3 meters tall began to move. The 3 giant puppets held heavy halberds, battle sabers, and spears respectively, and their eyes emitted a few inches of golden light. They only took a step forward, and everyone felt a slight tremor on the ground. Seeing that the 3 giant puppets had awakened, everyone stopped in their tracks and hurriedly retreated. However, the 3 giant puppets raised the weapons in their hands high up in the air. In an instant, a dazzling golden light bloomed. Immediately after, the ground trembled, and rays of golden light shot out from the ground, intersecting with the golden light in the air. In the blink of an eye, a golden light barrier was formed, enveloping Lung Shiqi and the other 20 people. Not only that, the ground in the distance was also bursting with golden light, forming another light barrier that enveloped the nearly 100 pure spirit realm cultivators behind them. 2 golden lights, one big and one small, separated everyone. Dong! Hen Qianshan's giant axe suddenly landed on the golden light barrier, producing a muffled sound. However, the golden light did not move. When Lung Shiqi and the others saw this, their faces darkened. They were trapped. Lung Shiqi's eyes flashed. He finally realized what was wrong. It was too smooth. These puppets were actually not weak, but with more than 90% of the spirit cultivator-s gathered here, just the numbers alone were enough to crush them. Especially for spirit cultivator of the pure spirit realm like them, from the lion-shaped puppet to the ape-shaped puppet, it could be said that they had killed their way out. He had more or less gained some benefits from it. What about the losses? Apart from the first round of arrows and sound waves that caused some deaths and injuries, only the human-shaped puppet spirit technique had killed more than a dozen pure spirit realm spirit cultivators. If this continued, it wouldn't be a problem for him to face the 3 giant puppets. Because at this moment, even the weakest person standing here was at the 4th layer of the pure spirit realm. Moreover, they were all leaders of their respective forces. Which one of them didn't have a trump card? It wouldn't be difficult for these people to defeat the 3 giant puppets if they worked together. Not only did they not suffer much damage, but they also obtained a large amount of cultivation resources. What was the purpose of the person behind this? Was she here purely to give him warmth? Or was she counting on this little bit of resources to make everyone kill each other? One had to know that those who could live until now were all shrewd people. If it was an extremely precious resource, it was possible for them to fight over it until their heads bled, but from the looks of it, such a treasure had yet to appear. At this moment, when these 2 light shields appeared, Lung Shiqi knew that the previous ones were just appetizers. The real danger had yet to appear. Roar, roar, roar. Just as Lung Shiqi was deep in thought, the roars of demon beasts could be heard from afar. Looking from afar, dozens of rank 1 demon beasts of different shapes were walking over step by step with scarlet eyes. And their targets were the spirit-gathering realm spirit cultivators at the outermost perimeter. Then, in another large light shield, a huge array formation suddenly lit up on the ground. Nearly 100 ape-shaped puppets rose from the array. Lung Shiqi's expression became heavier and heavier. What would greet them? Buzz. An array formation also lit up beneath their feet, and then a strangely shaped demonic beast drilled its way out. The reason why the demon beast was said to be strange was because it had a pair of incomparably thick legs that supported it to stand. The 4 limbs on it were arms of different sizes and shapes, and its entire back was covered with ferocious barbs. As for the head, it was completely impossible to identify what kind of demon beast it was. It looked like several types of demon beasts were stitched together. Seeing this demon beast, Lung Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly remembered that when he accidentally entered the underground space, he heard Zhuolao mention the fusion blood beast. Ao, the demon beast roared towards the sky, and actually made several different sounds. At the same time, a terrifying spiritual pressure was emitted. Everyone immediately felt their bodies tighten, and their faces turned pale. A touch of fear surfaced in their hearts. Is this a rank 1 demon beast? It can't be a rank 2 demon beast, right? Originally, even if it was the 3 giant puppets, they were confident. No matter how strong the puppets were, they were still puppets. They were too cumbersome. But a demon beast was different, and it was such a terrifying demon beast. However, no one could give them an answer. What answered them was the attack of the demon beast of the opposite sex. The demon beast of the opposite sex kicked its thick legs and directly flew over, waving its 4 limbs wildly. The person targeted by the demon beast of the opposite sex was the chief of the Silver Ring stronghold, Gu Huan. Gu Huan looked panicked at first, but he immediately reacted. His weapon was a strange ring-shaped weapon that could be used for both attack and defense. Gu Huan only had time to pour all his spiritual power into the weapon and block in front of him. With a bang, Gu Huan instantly flew out and hit the golden light cover. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. And his weapon was already full of cracks and could shatter at any time. When the others saw this scene, their hearts were shocked. Gu Huan's cultivation was at the 4th level of the pure spirit realm, and his weapon was a genuine rank 2 spirit weapon. In the blink of an eye, it was destroyed. How strong was the demon beast of the opposite sex? Unfortunately, there was no time for everyone to think more. Because at the same time, the 3 giant puppets also raised their weapons one after another. Everyone was flustered for a while, but after all, they were the leaders of a group, so they quickly calmed down. After Xue Wuhai was sent flying by the heavy halberd puppet, he immediately shouted, "We can't fight on our own anymore. Those who are fast, go and stall the mutated demon beast. Everyone else, work together to kill the giant puppets." Xue Wuhai's suggestion was indeed a solution, but there was a problem. There was something to be gained from killing the giant puppets. Needless to say, the resources of the giant puppets were definitely the most precious. And although the puppets were tall, they were very cumbersome. If they fought steadily, at least their lives wouldn't be in danger. But that demon beast was different. Its strength was so strong and its speed wasn't slow. Even if they only stalled it, there was the danger of losing their lives at any time. Thinking about it, who would be willing to stall the demon beast? Chapter 71. Seeing that no one was willing to deal with the mutated beast, Shui Wuhai's face showed some anger. Yushu then said, "Everyone in this situation, we should first consider how to survive. I suggest that no one is allowed to touch the giant puppet's resources. After all the trouble is dealt with, everyone will rely on their own abilities. If anyone dares to take the resources, everyone will work together to kill them." Everyone nodded when they heard this and immediately split into a few groups. Lung Shiqi, Delta Origi, and Xiong Ming all had movement techniques, so they went to stop the mutated beast. On the other hand, the 8 people led by Yushu, Shui Wuhai, and Hen Qianshan attacked the halberd puppet with all their might. The remaining 8 people split into 2 groups to stall the saber puppet and the spear puppet. Lung Shiqi and the other 2 were under the most pressure. Fortunately, their mission was only to stall the mutated beast, not to kill it. Whoosh! Lung Shiqi stepped on the black mist and barely dodged the mutated beast's attack. Delta Origi and Xiong Ming waited for an opportunity to attack. At this moment, Lung Shiqi and Delta Origi seemed to have returned to the time when they were fighting the blood-spotted leopard in the cave. The only difference was that the third person was Yushu back then, and now it was Xiong Ming. Lung Shiqi's body moved continuously, and the mutated beast missed again and again. It seemed to have realized that the person in front of it was not easy to deal with, so it decided to change targets. Coincidentally, Delta Origi's soft sword slashed the mutated beast's legs, but it only left a shallow sword mark. The mutated beast was furious and turned to pounce on Delta Origi. They had seen the mutated beast's strength before, so Delta Origi did not dare to take it head-on. She immediately used the confusion movement technique to dodge to the side. They barely managed to stall the mutated beast. On the other side, Yushu and the other 8 people had the absolute upper hand. The heavy halberd puppet was already riddled with scars, and it was estimated that it would not take long for it to break. The mutated beast pounced towards the Delta Origi again. She subconsciously moved a few steps to the side based on the speed of the mutated beast from before. But what Delta Origi didn't expect was that this time, a red light flashed from the abdomen of the mutated demonic beast, and the demonic beast's speed suddenly increased greatly, arriving in front of her in the blink of an eye. Lung Shiqi sensed that something was wrong when he saw the red light nearby. Seeing the alien beast rushing towards the Delta Origi, he hurriedly threw out the steel sword in his hand. Just as the 4 claws of the mutated beast were about to touch the Delta Origi, a steel blade suddenly appeared between the two. With a clang sound, the steel saber was sent flying by the mutated beast. It didn't stop the beast for long, but in this small amount of time, the Delta Origi's feet moved continuously, narrowly avoiding the attack. Delta Origi's back couldn't help but exude a thin layer of sweat after escaping a calamity. She looked meaningfully at Lung Shiqi, but didn't say anything. In fact, there was no time for her to speak. The mutated beast's sudden change made the hearts of the 3 people sink. It seemed that things weren't as simple as they thought. Sure enough, the mutated beast no longer pounced on them this time. Instead, it galloped towards the Delta Origi. Delta Origi had just caught her breath, but she immediately moved again. At the same time, she scattered her soft sword, and dozens of silver lights pierced out. The speed of the demonic beast wasn't much faster than before, but it was more agile. With a twist of its body, its 4 claws fell. Facing Delta Origi's silver sword light, the mutated beast didn't care at all, and its 4 claws directly rushed into the sword light. With a ding-ding-dang-dang-dang sound, Delta Origi's soft sword slashed onto the 4 arms of the demonic beast, giving off a metallic sound. A sword shadow fell, but it didn't cause any substantial damage to the demonic beast, but at the same time, it blocked the demonic beast's attack. Delta Origi took the opportunity to retreat. At the moment when Delta Origi and the demonic beast started to fight, Lung Shiqi ran over, and with a fist, a palm and a finger, he consecutively used 3 spirit techniques. and he specifically targeted the demonic beast's weak abdomen to attack. 3 spirit techniques smashed down, and the demonic beast's abdomen was split open. But the strange thing was, there wasn't any blood flowing out, but a few red rays of light. The demonic beast turned around, and its 4 claws crazily clawed towards Leng Shiqi. However, Leng Shiqi was already prepared, and raised his left arm in front of his body. He was wearing an arm guard on his arm, which he had obtained after defeating Moe. The next moment, Leng Shiqi instantly felt a terrifying force coming from his left arm, and the arm guard didn't even last for 2 breaths before it completely shattered. But at the same time, Leng Shiqi borrowed this force to retreat. Following that, Xiong Ming made his move. Xiong Ming wore a pair of sharp fist blades, and had already stealthily crept behind the demonic beast. Xiong Ming leapt up, and flipped his body in midair, with both arms facing downwards. Spiritual light flashed on his fist blades, and viciously pierced into the demonic beast's skull. Roar! The demonic beast howled in pain, and in the blink of an eye, its entire body flashed with a red glow, and a powerful spiritual energy sent Xiong Ming flying. Following that, its 4 sharp claws suddenly grew by 1-fold, and it clawed towards Xiong Ming, who was still in midair. Xiong Ming was in midair, and could only use his spiritual energy to forcefully change his body's posture, but he was unable to avoid the demonic beast's sharp claws. Right at this moment, a long azure whip lashed out, and the whip was extremely fast, directly binding the demonic beast's 4 sharp claws. The attacker was none other than Delta Origi. Delta Origi pulled with all her might, and the demonic beast's extended claws were pulled to the side, causing it to grab nothing but air. Xiong Ming finally landed safely on the ground, and he cast a grateful glance at Delta Origi. Delta Origi didn't even look at him, and it seemed like she had no intention of responding to him. At this moment, the mutated demonic beast's 4 arms suddenly moved, and it used the whip to drag Delta Origi over. Delta Origi's body flew over involuntarily, and even though she let go of the whip, it was still useless. The mutated demonic beast exerted all of its strength, and the azure whip that was wrapped around it instantly exploded into several dozen pieces. A ferocious light appeared in the mutated demonic beast's eyes, and it extended its 4 sharp claws again, and it was about to grab Delta Origi. At this critical moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Delta Origi. This figure was none other than Leng Shiqi. When Xiong Ming attacked just now, Leng Shiqi first picked up his steel saber, but who would have thought that the mutated demonic beast would target Delta Origi in the blink of an eye? Leng Shiqi didn't dare to hide his strength anymore, and he immediately used his Ghost Parade and Confusion footwork to block Delta Origi's path. At this moment, time seemed to slow down again, and there was no sadness or joy in his heart, only calmness. He held the steel saber in his hand, and his mind was constantly recalling the insights he had gained during this period of cultivation and the ideal saber strike. Just as the mutated demonic beast's 4 claws were less than an inch away from Leng Shiqi's body, Leng Shiqi moved. Whoosh! A magnificent saber light in the shape of a crescent moon suddenly bloomed, and everyone only saw a flash of light in front of their eyes. In the next moment, 4 different-shaped claws that were as hard as spirit weapons fell to the ground. That saber light just now was a move that Leng Shiqi had been experimenting with for a long time, and it was only at this critical moment that he comprehended it. Crescent Moon Slash. This move was a perfect fusion of the Crescent Moon Slash, the Golden Saber Strike, and a saber technique. With one slash, everything could be cut. Chapter 72. Author's Tip for Not More Than Half a Year, and Pomegranate D Mama. Ah! The alien beast howled in pain after losing its 4 claws. Leng Shiqi took advantage of this opportunity to pull Delta Origi back. His stunning slash naturally attracted everyone's attention, especially Delta Origi, who was close at hand. She could clearly feel how sharp and terrifying that beautiful slash was. However, her eyes were filled with splendor. The others were shocked when they saw Leng Shiqi cut off the alien beast's 4 claws with a single slash. Then, they became vigilant and raised Leng Shiqi's threat level to the same level as Blood Marshal C. However, Leng Shiqi's fierce slash came with a price. Leng Shiqi panted as he looked at the steel sword in his hand and smiled helplessly. At this time, this steel saber could no longer be called a saber, because there were a few huge gaps on its body, and the entire blade was almost broken into two. Sigh. Leng Shiqi sighed and threw the steel sword aside. Beside him, Meng Ming was also shocked by the half-moon slash. However, he quickly recovered and took advantage of the alien beast's howl to swing his arms. The two blades in his hands flew out. Taking a closer look, there were two very thin threads behind the fist blade. The blades flew out and pierced into the alien beast's abdomen without any resistance. 2 pieces of flesh were sliced off. Then, Meng Ming's arms danced in the air. The 2 fists danced in the air, leaving wounds on the monster's body every time they struck. Delta Origi beside Leng Shiqi gritted her teeth and stabbed forward with her soft sword. When Leng Shiqi saw this, he opened his mouth and smiled bitterly. Their mission was only to stall the alien beast, but Delta Origi and Meng Ming seemed to have gotten carried away. Since the 2 of them were attacking, he couldn't stay idle. He pulled out the dagger from his ankle and waited for an opportunity to strike. Gu San's bewildering footwork was displayed. Every time she moved, she would stab out with her sword. Her speed became faster and faster. Gradually, she formed a series of shadows and sword auras that drowned the demonic beast. Leng Shiqi's eyes widened when he saw this. He actually saw the shadow of Dazzling Flower in Delta Origi's attack. He couldn't help but marvel at Delta Origi's comprehension. Under the fierce attacks of Delta Origi and Meng Ming, more and more wounds appeared on the alien beast's body. However, all of a sudden, a blinding blood-red light burst out of the xenomorph beast's body. An invisible power erupted, knocking Gu San and Xiong Ming back. Who knew what was going to happen to the alien beast this time? Leng Shiqi and the other 2 surrounded the alien beast in a triangular formation, ready to attack at any time. Meanwhile, the alien beast was bathed in the blood-red light. Its body was slowly changing. The beast's skin on the surface began to melt, revealing the flesh underneath. The alien beast's Meng Ming's body was pulsating strangely. Its flesh was constantly regenerating, and the 4 broken claws were also growing back. After a few breaths, the alien beast became even more ferocious and ugly. It looked like it had just been fished out of a pot of oil. At the same time, on the other side of the battlefield, Yushu and the others finally destroyed the halberd puppet. They also noticed the situation here. They couldn't help but raise their eyebrows. However, they didn't pay too much attention to it. Their top priority was to take care of the remaining 2 giant puppets. Only Yushu felt a sense of déjà vu when he saw this scene. He recalled the mutation of the blood-spotted leopard back then. Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi also looked at each other. Clearly, they had also thought of the same thing. After this transformation, the alien beast's strength and speed have greatly increased. We can't fight it anymore. There are only 2 puppets left. Reinforcements will be here soon. We just need to hold them back, Leng Shiqi hurriedly said. He was afraid that Delta Origi and Hengming would fight to the death again. The alien beast suddenly roared into the sky. A blood-red light burst out of its eyes. It looked left and right, then stared at Leng Shiqi. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. Leng Shiqi quickly raised his arm. A wall of earth rose from the ground. Then, Leng Shiqi immediately teleported away. In the next moment, 4 sharp claws smashed the wall of earth and even tore apart Leng Shiqi's clothes. Leng Shiqi, who had already dodged to the side, sucked in a breath of cold air. He was shocked. This alien beast's speed has become so fast. Seeing that its attack had missed, the alien beast's blood-red eyes locked onto Leng Shiqi's figure again. With a stomp of its feet, it created a small pit in the ground, and its body flew up like an arrow leaving the bowstring. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi did not dare to be careless. He no longer hid his strength. He used the Ghost Parade and Confusion footwork at the same time. Once, he narrowly dodged the mutated demonic beast. Delta Origi and Hengming were shocked to see the alien beast's speed. Hengming thought to himself, if it were me, would I be able to dodge this attack? The next battle was a chase between Leng Shiqi and the mutated demonic beast. Although Delta Origi and Hengming also cultivated movement techniques, they were no longer able to participate in a battle of this level. However, they were unwilling to just watch helplessly like this. At this moment, Leng Shiqi hurriedly said, "Go help Yushu and kill those 2 giant puppets as soon as possible. I can still hold on for a while." When the 2 heard this, they knew that this was their best choice. Then they turned around and joined the other battle. On the other side of the battlefield, with the addition of these 2 experts at the 5th level of the pure spirit realm, the one-sided battle instantly turned into a one-sided one. After a short while, they destroyed the giant puppet wielding a saber. At this moment, Yushu's eyes turned. He changed his strategy and shouted, "Leave a few people to stall the spear puppets. Everyone else, kill the alien beast with all your strength. No one can touch the items dropped by the puppets. Otherwise, everyone will work together to kill them. You have to know that no one can walk out of this golden light barrier. There is no way out." Shui Wuhai and the others pondered for a moment. They glanced at Leng Shiqi, who was still struggling, and their eyes flickered with light. They seemed to be hesitating whether to help Leng Shiqi now. However, when they saw the terrifying speed of the demonic beast, they finally nodded. Right now, only Leng Shiqi's speed was enough to hold back the mutated demonic beast, so they had no choice but to put away their thoughts. They left 4 people to continue stalling the spear puppets, while the rest of them surrounded the alien beast. With the support of a large number of spirit cultivators at the middle stage of the pure spirit realm, Leng Shiqi immediately felt the pressure on him decrease. Every time he successfully dodged, several people would tacitly attack the demonic beast. No matter how strong this demonic beast was, it did not take long for it to fall under the siege of more than a dozen spirit cultivators at the middle stage of the pure spirit realm. Only before it died, it barely managed to drag one person down with it. Everyone freed up their hands and returned again. In a very short time, they finished off the last spear puppet. At this point, all the puppet demonic beasts in the golden light had been killed. And they had only lost a few people. Phew! Everyone secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but they immediately raised their vigilance. Because the battle had just begun. Chapter 73. Leng Shiqi didn't have much spirit energy left in his body, and his face was a little pale. He quickly took out a few pills to recover his spirit energy and swallowed them. He wasn't the only one. Almost everyone else was doing the same. The remaining 18 people had gathered a lot of resources, and they still had some spirit energy recovery pills. The scene suddenly quieted down, and the 18 people's gazes swept back and forth between the 3 blue balls of light on the ground and the golden ball of light in the air. Their gazes gradually became heated, and the atmosphere in the field became more and more hostile. Leng Shiqi and Yushu stood together, and Wu Qing and Wu Xan also came over. Delta Origi joined forces with Green Lotus Gang's leader, Green Lotus, and Silver Ring Stronghold's leader, Bone Ring. The others also joined forces in 2s and 3s, but the strongest were undoubtedly 2 groups of people. One group was naturally Leng Shiqi and the other 3. 2 at the 5th level of the pure spirit realm and 2 at the 4th level of the pure spirit realm. They had the advantage in terms of cultivation and numbers. The other group was Shui Wuhai, Hen Qianshan, and Zhang Zhiga. Although there were only 3 of them, they had Shui Wuhai, who was at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. Moreover, the 3 of them were all very aggressive and had extremely strong explosive power. If the 3 of them charged at full strength, who could stop them? Just as everyone was afraid of each other, Shui Wuhai moved first. He took Hen Qianshan and Zhang Zhiga and rushed towards the golden ball of light. Meng Ming and the other 2 also rushed over, and Delta Origi and the others followed closely behind. Yushu was slightly anxious when he saw this, and just as he was about to move, he was stopped by Leng Shiqi. They won't be able to determine the winner in a short time. Don't worry about it, let's go grab the blue ball of light first. Leng Shiqi said in a low voice. Okay. Leng Shiqi and the other 3 immediately rushed towards the nearest blue ball of light. The remaining 5 people were basically at the 4th level of the pure spirit realm, and when they saw Leng Shiqi and the others rushing over, they cursed inwardly. The dagger in Leng Shiqi's hand flew and stabbed at a scarred youth. The scarred youth's expression immediately changed. Just as he was about to dodge, Leng Shiqi's figure suddenly disappeared before his eyes. The scar-eyed youth was startled in his heart. But he didn't panic. Instead, he raised his long saber horizontally and slashed backwards. Ding! The dagger and the long saber emitted a long metallic sound. Leng Shiqi was also a little surprised. He didn't expect the young man with the scar to predict his attacks so accurately. But then, Leng Shiqi flicked his wrist and threw the dagger as a hidden weapon. The two of them were too close, and it was too late for the scarred youth to retreat. Instead, his body suddenly leaned back at a strange angle, and he narrowly dodged the dagger. Even though this move of his was ingenious, it also exposed a flaw in his plan. Leng Shiqi closed in and punched out 2 spiritual skills in succession. The scarred youth couldn't dodge this time and was sent flying by Leng Shiqi while vomiting blood. At this time, Leng Shiqi took the opportunity to snatch his long saber and no longer cared about him. Holding the saber in his hand, Leng Shiqi suddenly felt a lot more stable. At this time, although Yushu's side was fighting 3 against 4, they weren't at a disadvantage. Leng Shiqi didn't choose to help. Instead, he took the opportunity to pick up a ball of light on the ground. After smashing it with a slap, a spiritual skill book appeared in his hand. Rank 3 Spiritual Skill. Channel Unfolding Sword Chi. Discovered Rank 3 Spiritual Skill, Channel Unfolding Sword Chi. Do you want to learn it? Requires 2 skill points. Leng Shiqi turned his head to look at the battle on both sides. Seeing that everyone was fighting fiercely, he made a prompt decision and chose no. Then, he didn't delay any longer and went to support Yushu and the others. With the addition of Leng Shiqi, the 4 people were completely suppressed. After a while, someone shouted, "Stop fighting, stop fighting. It's just 2 cultivation resources. I'll give it to you." Hearing this, Yushu and Leng Shiqi looked at each other and nodded. For 2 cultivation resources, they didn't need to fight to the death. If they really fought to the death, even they wouldn't be able to take down the 4 people in a short period of time. Even if they weren't careful, they might lose. Then, Leng Shiqi smashed the other 2 blue balls of light. The smaller one contained a rank 3 spiritual skill, Moon Cloud Codex. The other big ball of light contained a rank 3 spiritual weapon. It was a broad-bladed saber. Leng Shiqi directly picked up the saber. He stretched out 2 fingers of his left hand and rubbed the saber. With a twist of his right hand, a cold light flashed. "Good saber." Leng Shiqi said, "I'll use this saber first. We'll study the spiritual skill and cultivation method together later." Yushu naturally didn't have any objections. Wu Qing and Wu Xian also knew that Leng Shiqi's saber skills were amazing. They just took a few more glances at the rank 3 sword technique. Leng Shiqi then said, "Let's go and get that golden ball of light." The giant puppet's items were all rank 3 precious resources. What would be in the golden ball of light? The 4 people adjusted themselves slightly and ran toward the golden ball of light. At this time, they didn't care why Yushu was the clan leader of the Yushu clan. Why would he listen to Leng Shiqi? Behind them, the people who had been defeated earlier hesitated for a moment before following. They knew that with their strength, the chances of getting the golden ball of light weren't high. However, they still had to give it a try. At this moment, in another battle, the 3 groups led by Delta Origi, Blood Marshal C, and Meng Ming were in a chaotic battle. In fact, they were already fighting with all their might. Leng Shiqi was the fastest and was the first to arrive. At this time, Delta Origi knocked away her opponent with a swing of her sword. She turned around and stabbed at Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi's expression didn't change when he saw this. He waved his saber and blocked the attack. Yushu, who had just arrived, quickly said in a low voice, "Madam, we're on the same side, we're on the same side." Scram. Delta Origi growled and immediately stabbed out with her sword to force Yushu back. Leng Shiqi smiled bitterly and helplessly in his heart, but he said calmly, "You guys go. I'll deal with her." "All right, you two take it easy." Yushu raised his eyebrows at Leng Shiqi and entered the battlefield with Wu Qing and Wu Exin. Ding! Leng Shiqi's saber and Delta Origi's sword clashed. The two of them stared at each other with their weapons in between. Delta Origi's eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight. Leng Shiqi suddenly understood why Delta Origi was a little carried away when they were dealing with the demon beasts earlier. He thought to himself, she couldn't have been provoked by me, right? In fact, that was indeed the case. Delta Origi remembered very clearly that 4 months ago, Leng Shiqi was only at the 8th level of the spirit-gathering realm. At that time, she could defeat Leng Shiqi effortlessly. 3 months ago, Leng Shiqi's cultivation was at the 9th level of the spirit-gathering realm, but he could already fuse 2 spiritual techniques and unleash an astonishing sword technique. More than a month ago, Leng Shiqi mysteriously appeared by her side and easily helped her dominate the stone forest. Now, when they were dealing with the mutated demon beast earlier, Leng Shiqi once again displayed a stunning saber attack and severely injured the demon beast. After the mutated demon beast mutated, Leng Shiqi used his terrifying speed to hold it back. Delta Origi could be said to have witnessed Leng Shiqi's rapid improvement and how Leng Shiqi surpassed her step by step. This made her feel a sense of defeat, but at the same time, a desire to fight surged in her heart. Therefore, she wanted to know how strong Leng Shiqi was now. Chapter 74. Delta Origi did not hold back and quickly stabbed out with her flexible sword. Instantly, dozens of silver sword lights were scattered. Meanwhile, Leng Shiqi also performed the extreme shadow sword technique, slashing out a series of sword shadows. Ding ding dang dang. A series of crisp sounds were heard. The two people's swords kept clashing, splashing out a little bit of dazzling sparks. The two people's first move was so intense that it attracted the attention of the others. Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. Although he did not know what kind of sword technique Delta Origi's sword technique was, he could tell with his rich experience that Delta Origi's sword technique had reached the great perfection realm. From this, it seemed that Delta Origi not only had superb cultivation talent, but her comprehension was also probably terrifyingly high. Leng Shiqi even faintly sensed that Delta Origi did not seem to be using her full strength. Coincidentally, Delta Origi also had the same thought at this moment. After this move, the two people were evenly matched. Delta Origi did not give up and stabbed her sword again. However, this time, the sword did not have the same strong fighting spirit as before. Leng Shiqi immediately understood Delta Origi's intention. Then, the two people fiercely exchanged blows. Everyone in the entire light screen could be said to be a mess. At first, everyone was relatively restrained. After all, they were all people who had established their own forces. They knew that their lives were precious, and it was not worthwhile to fight to the death here. But gradually, as the fight went on, he became enraged. Especially Shui Wahai, Hen Qianshan, and Zhang Zhiga. Whether it was the cultivation method they cultivated or their personalities, they were very fiery. Originally, Leng Shiqi and the other 3 people did not compete for the golden light ball in the beginning. The 3 of them could be said to be the strongest. However, they still did not succeed because there were constantly people who came to stop them. Originally, it was the Delta Origi and the Netherworld, but after the Delta Origi left, Yushu came along. The more Blood Marshal C fought, the more irritated he became. Suddenly, he let out an angry roar and leaped up. The black spear in his hand danced in the air at high speed. Then he smashed it down. At this time, the thing blocking him was the bone ring. His weapon had long been destroyed by the mutated demon beast, and his strength had been greatly reduced. In addition, the Blood Marshal C had suddenly erupted with power. Caught off guard, he had been killed by the Blood Marshal C in a single move. At this moment, everyone's movements paused. Did someone die? Someone had died. This wasn't the same as before, where he had to deal with puppets or demonic beasts. But now, everyone was silently abiding by the unspoken rules, but you suddenly made a killing move. Then who would want to play rules with you? Boom. A few people in the field suddenly burst out with powerful spiritual energy. It was obvious that they had been hiding their strength just now. Following that, the battle became even more intense. From time to time, screams could be heard. Red gradually became the main color here. "Kill the Blood Marshal C first." No one knew who suddenly shouted this. The one with the highest cultivation and the greatest threat was undoubtedly Blood Marshal C. Immediately, several people attacked him at the same time. "How dare you!" Blood Marshal C roared angrily. The spiritual energy in his body circulated rapidly, and he even took the initiative to meet the attack with his spear. Hen Qianshan and Zhang Zhiga wanted to help, but they were also stopped. Blood Marshal C suddenly became the target of public criticism. However, at this moment, a figure stealthily approached the golden ball of light. This person was the scarred youth who had been injured by the Leng Shiqi. He knew that with his injuries, he had already lost the right to fight. Since that was the case, he might as well take the risk. Moreover, because he hadn't participated in the battle, he had the time to observe the situation around him. He suddenly realized that the golden light barrier enveloping them was actually uneven. He had already found a weak spot. As long as he could succeed and forcibly break through the light barrier, there was still a chance of survival. Of course, he also knew that this chance of survival was very slim, but it was still better than waiting for death here. He didn't believe that after the dust settled, others would let him go. Whoosh! The scarred youth used all of his spiritual energy to quickly rush toward the golden light ball. Unfortunately, someone still noticed his intentions. This person was Xiong Ming. Xiong Ming directly used a movement technique to shake off his opponent. His feet moved quickly, and he caught up to the scarred youth in a few breaths. The scarred youth was just about to grab the golden light ball when he suddenly felt a sharp piercing sound from behind him. He knew that he had been discovered. However, there was no turning back. Success or failure depended on this. The scarred youth reached out his hand. He was less than a foot away from the golden light ball. Unfortunately, this distance was a distance that he would never be able to cross. A ferocious weapon had already pierced through his abdomen. Xiong Ming expressionlessly kicked the scarred youth's corpse to the side. Looking at the golden light ball in front of him, Xiong Ming couldn't help but reach out his hand. This scene fell into the eyes of the others, and all of them gave up on their opponents with a glare. One after another, they surrounded and attacked. Xiong Ming's expression changed when he saw this. He hurriedly pulled back and retreated. He couldn't touch this light ball. Whoever dared to touch it would become the target of attack. All of this naturally fell into Leng Shiqi's eyes. He secretly pondered, then gave Delta Origi a look. Then, the two of them slowly moved toward Xue Wuhai as they fought. At this moment, Xue Wuhai could be said to be fighting from all sides. He didn't seem to be at a disadvantage even though he was fighting 1 against 4. However, looking at his sweat-soaked clothes, he didn't seem to be having an easy time. Xue Wuhai was also very anxious. Although he had the highest cultivation among those present, he knew very well that none of the people who could fight here were easy to deal with. In addition, although he was currently unparalleled, he was consuming large amounts of spiritual energy at every moment. His spiritual techniques and fighting style were abnormally ferocious, but at the same time, he consumed a lot of spiritual energy. Feeling the spiritual energy in his body constantly decreasing, Xue Wuhai decided that he couldn't drag this out any longer. If this continued, he would be dragged to death. All of you die. Xue Wuhai suddenly roared angrily. Then, a strange blood-red glow appeared on his black spear. The next moment, Xue Wuhai forcefully pulled out his spear like a whip. The 4 people surrounding him raised their weapons to block. However, the blood-red glow on the spear flashed, and the spiritual weapons in their hands all shattered. The terrifying power smashed into their bodies, and they immediately spat out blood and flew back. One move had seriously injured 4 people. Xue Wuhai's strength was deeply imprinted in everyone's minds. However, at this moment, 2 figures flashed to Xue Wuhai's side, one on the left and one on the right. Delta Origi pointed with her flexible sword, and 4 swords instantly stabbed at Xue Wuhai's vital points. On the other side, Leng Shiqi raised the long saber in his hand high. The blade flickered with a sharp spiritual light, and he slashed it down heavily. Xue Wuhai, who had just displayed his invincible might, had already sensed the two's sneak attack, but the spiritual energy in his body was almost exhausted. In addition, after that powerful attack, it was difficult for him to mobilize both his spiritual energy and blood. He could only roar in grief and indignation and raise his spear. Crack! Without the support of spiritual energy, the spear was directly cut in half by Lung Shiqi's stage 3 spirit saber. After cutting the spear, the saber didn't stop. With a flash of the saber, Xue Wuhai's head was separated from his body. Chapter 75. From Xue Wuhai's sudden display of power to severely injure the four to being beheaded by Lung Shiqi, only a few breaths of time had passed. This series of changes shocked everyone. Xue Wuhai's cultivation at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm could be said to be the strongest. Everyone wanted to kill him, but they all tacitly agreed that they couldn't. It was enough to defeat him. However, seeing Xue Wuhai's head rolling on the ground, they still found it hard to believe. The great Xue Wuhai died just like that? This was also because Lung Shiqi and Delta Origi had grasped the timing too well. If they had been a bit earlier, they would have been seriously injured like the others. If they had been a bit later, Xue Wuhai might have recovered. Although he might not have been able to mobilize his spiritual power, it was very likely that he had a life-saving trump card. Once he used it, the result would be unknown. When did they team up? Good kill. They were fighting so fiercely just now. Their emotions were all faked. The others stared at Lung Shiqi and Delta Origi, all secretly shocked. It turned out that the two of them had secretly teamed up long ago to find a chance to kill Xue Wuhai. Oh, so that's how it is. They're too cunning. Yushu secretly despised the two of them in his heart. However, being surprised didn't affect them at all. However, the situation of the battle had changed greatly at this time. As soon as Xue Wuhai died, Hen Qianshan and Zhang Zhiga, who were his allies, immediately received extra care. The two of them instantly felt the pressure increase greatly. Hen Qianshan hurriedly shouted, "Have you lost your minds? Now the Yushu clan, Blood Moon, Twin Heroes Hall, and Green Lotus Gang have teamed up. They have a total of 6 people. If we continue to kill each other, we'll all be killed by them. Why don't we team up now and get rid of the Yushu clan first?" At this point in the battle, there were only 15 people left on the field. The Yushu clan had 6 people on their side. Unknowingly, they had gained such a great advantage, which made the others' hearts sink. The people besieging Hen Qianshan and Zhang Zhiga also stopped. The corners of Hen Qianshan's mouth curled up when he saw this. However, in the next moment, his expression changed drastically. Delta Origi, who was not far away from him, suddenly moved. Together with her sword, she turned into a silver ray of light. Like a silver snake coming out of its hole, she pierced straight towards Hen Qianshan. Hen Qianshan's heart suddenly tightened, but he was still a figure who dominated a region. He instantly raised his giant axe and prepared to fight. However, just as the Delta Origi's flexible sword was about to pierce him, Hen Qianshan suddenly felt his legs go soft. His feet sank as if he had stepped into a quagmire. If it were any other time, such a small accident wouldn't be a big deal. But at this critical moment, it was enough to take someone's life. Hen Qianshan's body became unstable and he almost fell down. His spirit power circulated and he quickly stabilized his body. However, Delta Origi's sword was already in front of him. Ha! Hen Qianshan saw that he couldn't dodge, so he used the giant axe to block in front of him. He poured all of his spiritual power into it, making the giant axe overflow with light. However, just as Delta Origi was about to stab him, her figure strangely disappeared. In the blink of an eye, Delta Origi actually appeared behind Hen Qianshan. Blood flowed on her silver sword. Hen Qianshan spat out a big mouthful of blood. He lowered his head and looked at the bloody hole in his chest. His body swayed and fell to the ground. Delta Origi killed Hen Qianshan, who was at the 5th level of the pure spirit realm. What was even more shocking was that the cultivation revealed by Delta Origi was at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. She is also at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. Shui Wuhai is not the only one who has reached this realm. It turns out that she has also been hiding her strength. That's not right. Then why was the cultivation she revealed in the previous battles still at the 5th level of the pure spirit realm? Different thoughts appeared in everyone's mind. What surprised Leng Shiqi was that Delta Origi's sword was clearly a simplified version of lustful chaotic flowers. I still underestimated her comprehension ability. Leng Shiqi was secretly amazed. However, now was not the time for him to be amazed. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone was still distracted, Leng Shiqi rushed out. He turned his long saber and slashed out with Gale Slash. Suddenly, a saber light flashed, and its target was Zhang Zhiga. As early as when Hen Qianshan died, Zhang Zhiga was extremely regretful in his heart. When he agreed to join forces with Shui Wuhai and Hen Qianshan, he thought that he was hugging two thick thighs. However, these two people died one after another, which made him feel like his heart was dead. He knew that everyone's next target was very likely to be him. Therefore, he had long been prepared in his heart. However, being prepared did not mean that he would be safe and sound. In the face of Leng Shiqi's saber light, Zhang Zhiga's face darkened. He immediately took out a blood-colored pill from his chest and hurriedly swallowed it. Then, Zhang Zhiga's entire body emitted a crimson blood light, and he let out a painful cry. Leng Shiqi's saber light slashed at the blood light, instantly tearing apart a large patch of blood light. However, at the same time, the saber light's power was rapidly depleted. In the end, although the saber light tore through the red light, it only left a scar on Zhang Zhiga's body. Zhang Zhiga's fists collided with a muffled sound. When he looked up, his eyes had already turned blood red. He was glaring at Leng Shiqi with a murderous intent. Just as Leng Shiqi and Zhang Zhiga were fighting, Delta Origi also attacked. He did not come to help Leng Shiqi, but to find the remaining people. Delta Origi's saber light sprinkled down, directly enveloping the two people. Yushu chuckled and faced Hengming. Qinglian also consciously found an opponent of equal strength. Meanwhile, Wuqing and Wuxin dealt with the remaining three people. The two of them were brothers, so they cooperated very well with each other. It was not a problem for them to fight 2 against 3 for a short period of time. Leng Shiqi and the other 5 people took the initiative to attack at this moment. It was 6 against 8. Bang! There was a loud sound. Zhang Zhiga's fist slammed into the ground, creating a large crater. Leng Shiqi, who was originally standing there, had already moved away. Die! Zhang Zhiga opened his mouth wide and shouted a word. 2 sharp teeth seemed to have gradually grown out of his mouth. Moreover, his whole body was twitching from time to time. Leng Shiqi noticed this scene and could not help but frown. He could see that Zhang Zhiga's consciousness seemed to be slowly being devoured. It would not be long before he became a monster immersed in slaughter. If that's the case, I'll send you on your way, Leng Shiqi muttered to himself. Then, Leng Shiqi's figure disappeared. In the next moment, Leng Shiqi directly appeared behind Zhang Zhiga. However, he did not attack. Instead, he moved away again. Sure enough, Zhang Zhiga's ferocious fist slammed into Leng Shiqi's previous position. Unfortunately, it missed again. At this moment, a magnificent saber light in the shape of a crescent moon suddenly cut through the sky. It instantly tore apart the crimson light on Zhang Zhiga's body and completely swallowed him. Chapter 76. Leng Shiqi's waning moon swift slash could even cut off the claws of a mutated beast, let alone Zhang Zhiga. After killing Zhang Zhiga, Leng Shiqi was not in a hurry to attack again. Instead, he swallowed a few more pills to recover his spiritual energy. At the same time, he was carefully observing the situation of each battle. Delta Origi's 2 opponents were only at the 4th level of the pure spirit realm. She even had the upper hand in a 1 versus 2 fight. Yushu and Hengming were evenly matched, and so was Qinglian. Wuqing and Wuxin were outnumbered, but they were still able to hold on. As the saying goes, help the strong and not the weak. Leng Shiqi decided to help Gu San deal with those 2 people first. Lung Shiqi entered the battle with his saber, and the two people immediately turned pale with fright. They were already at a disadvantage against Delta Origi. Now that Ling Shiqi was here, their lives were immediately in danger. At this time, Hengming, who was fighting with Yushu, was actually taking the time to pay attention to Delta Origi and Lung Shiqi's movements. Seeing that Ling Shiqi did not attack him, Hengming's eyes flashed. Then, with a wave of his hand, he threw out two small, swarthy black balls. Yushu knew that something was wrong and hurriedly retreated. The two balls attracted each other in the air and flew out in a spiral. Immediately after, blue lightning threads were released, and they quickly weaved into a large net, covering everyone in it. Then they suddenly fell. Everyone was shocked. Lung Shiqi and Delta Origi moved repeatedly to avoid this lightning net. Everyone else was covered by the lightning net. Fortunately, this lightning net seemed to only be able to paralyze people and was not very powerful. They were only temporarily immobilized. As for Hengming, the moment he threw out the two balls, he rushed toward the golden ball of light as fast as he could. Everyone else was bound by the lightning net and could not move, and Ling Shiqi and Delta Origi could not stop him in time. Hengming's hand finally touched the golden ball of light. At this moment, a burst of intense golden light bloomed, and the golden ball of light made cracking sounds. Then the golden ball of light directly exploded, and 3 golden rays of light of different shapes shot out from it. Hengming's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast, and he grabbed the slender golden light. Lung Shiqi and Delta Origi arrived one after another, and rushed toward the nearest east and west. Lung Shiqi grabbed an oval-shaped golden light, and Delta Origi grabbed the last rectangular object. At the same time, the golden light barrier that had been trapping them all this time suddenly shattered, turning into specks of golden light that fell down like a golden rain. After the golden rain fell on everyone's body, it actually entered their bodies. Lung Shiqi was shocked and immediately checked his body. He found that the golden light spots quickly merged into his bloodline and even into his sea of vital energy. Immediately afterward, an extremely warm and comfortable feeling filled his entire body. At this moment, the lightning net that Hengming threw out also dissipated, and everyone was a little stunned by this series of changes. However, they immediately came to their senses and quickly distanced themselves from each other. Yushu and the others stood next to Lung Shiqi and Delta Origi. At this moment, the golden light in Lung Shiqi, Delta Origi, and Hengming's hands also dissipated, and the true appearance of the items inside was revealed. Hengming was holding a long and narrow saber with a strange shape. It was light purple all over, and there was a magnificent purple light flowing on the blade. It was a pair of sabers. Lung Shiqi, who had 2 level 3 spirit artifacts, narrowed his eyes. He could clearly feel that the pair of sabers were far sharper than his spirit swords and spirit sabers. It was most likely a level 4 spirit artifact. Delta Origi, on the other hand, was holding a secret manual. He didn't know if it was a cultivation technique or a spirit technique. Since Hengming had a level 4 spirit artifact, Delta Origi must have a level 4 spirit artifact as well. Lung Shiqi lowered his head and looked at the gray pill bottle in his hand. He couldn't help but frown. Everyone else had level 4 spirit artifacts or cultivation techniques, but his was a pill, and he didn't know what kind of pill it was. However, if this pill was placed together with a spirit artifact or cultivation technique, its value couldn't be low. Lung Shiqi collected his thoughts and put away the bottle. Then he looked at Hengming with hostility. As if sensing Lung Shiqi's intention, Hengming grinned and said, "What? You want to test the power of a level 4 spirit artifact?" With that, Hengming circulated his spirit energy, and a strange purple pattern immediately appeared on the saber. A wave of sharp energy rushed towards him. Lung Shiqi's expression froze. He exchanged glances with Delta Origi and Yushu, and decided not to act rashly. After all, Hengming had a spirit artifact that could directly increase combat power. It could be said that this was the only level 4 spirit artifact on the entire Blood Mist Island. No one wanted to test it with their own body. If Hengming had a cultivation technique or a pill, Lung Shiqi would have definitely joined forces to fight for it. Hung Ming secretly sighed in relief when he saw this. He then hurriedly left and retreated to the other side of the golden light barrier. Seeing that there was nothing left to fight for, the others also dispersed. Leng Shiqi, on the other hand, revealed a rare smile. This time, their side could be said to have achieved a complete victory. There were a total of 6 cultivation resources on this side, and they had obtained 5. Next, their attention was focused on the other golden light barrier. The other battlefield belonged to the 100 or so spirit cultivators at the early stage of the pure spirit realm, and their opponents were the dozens of ape-shaped puppets. At this time, there were about 70 to 80 spirit cultivators left, and there were only 30 to 40 ape-shaped puppets. No matter how strong those ape-shaped puppets were, they were still inanimate objects. It was only a matter of time before they were completely wiped out. According to his calculations, after they defeated all the ape-shaped puppets, the golden light barrier would disappear. Leng Shiqi looked into the distance and looked at the last battlefield. There were more than 10 level 1 demonic beasts that were like tigers that had entered a flock of sheep, slaughtering the spirit cultivators in all directions. Not long ago, there were over 1,000 people, but now, there were only about 600 to 700 left. Leng Shiqi and the others immediately tensed up, including Hung Ming and the other pure spirit realm middle stage cultivators. Those demonic beasts were slaughtering their subordinates. These 14 people who were fighting to the death just now tacitly rushed towards those level 1 demonic beasts. They worked together in 2s and 3s, and together with the spirit cultivators of the spirit gathering realm, they quickly killed several demonic beasts. Immediately after, they immediately killed their next target. However, Leng Shiqi looked at the corpses of the demonic beasts and secretly felt that it was a pity. These were all system coins. It was a pity that under the watchful eyes of so many people, he could not directly sell them to the system. During this process, Yushu quickly gathered all the people of the Yushu clan. At that time, there were more than 70 spirit cultivators of the spirit gathering realm, but now, there were only 40 or so people that could be found. Then, he gave Leng Shiqi a look. Leng Shiqi nodded his head in understanding. He forced the demonic beasts in front of him back with his blade and retreated. Then he and Yushu slowly left the battlefield with the people of the Yushu clan. As for the others, what did they have to do with him? Chapter 77. Seeing the Yushu clan's actions, Blood Moon, Seiji, Green Lotus Gang, Shuanging Hall, and other forces all made the same choice. As for those forces whose leaders were already dead, no one cared about them anymore. Originally, those people still had hope in their hearts, hoping that they could hold on until the experts in their gangs returned. They had indeed waited, but what they waited for was someone else's. At this time, there were still about 10 demonic beasts left, and there were only 200 to 300 spirit cultivators scattered around. These people were only in the spirit gathering realm, they couldn't win or run away. This was simply a massacre. Just as they were feeling despair, Yushu stood out and shouted, "Those who are willing to join the Yushu clan, I will protect their lives." Yushu's words were like a life-saving straw that suddenly appeared, and immediately, many people ran towards the Yushu clan. As they ran, they shouted, I am willing to join the Yushu clan. I swear to be loyal to the Yushu clan for life. Save me, save me." 2 demonic beasts were chasing behind these people. Leng Shiqi and Yushu immediately rushed out to stop the demonic beasts. Seeing this, the leaders of the other forces were all stunned, but they immediately reacted and followed the actions of the Yushu clan. Not long after, a few more demonic beasts died, and the various forces replenished their manpower. In the end, there were still a few demonic beasts left. They seemed to have some intelligence, seeing all the spirit cultivators in front of them standing neatly, and the dozen or so people with outstanding strength. They roared a few times and turned around to escape. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi and the rest heaved a sigh of relief. They had fought continuously and did not have much spirit energy left. Furthermore, during this period, they had forcefully swallowed many pills, causing their meridians to ache. If they continued fighting, even they would not be able to hold on for long. Yushu immediately shouted, "Rest here." Then, Leng Shiqi and Yushu walked to the center of the crowd and sat down cross-legged with spirit stones in their hands, recovering their spirit energy as quickly as possible. After about half an hour, a crisp sound came from the sky. Leng Shiqi felt something in his heart. He opened his eyes and saw that the golden light barrier that trapped the spirit cultivator at the early stage of the pure spirit realm had indeed shattered. The light shield also turned into a golden rain that fell on the remaining 60 or so people. Yushu looked over anxiously, but in the end he only found Hua Lingling and the other 2 new spirit cultivators. As for the others, needless to say, they had all fallen. Yushu immediately welcomed the 3 of them over. He didn't ask them what they had obtained and let them recover their spirit chi first. Most of the surviving spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm found their own families, but there were still a dozen or so people standing there awkwardly. This was because their leaders were dead, and a large number of their subordinates had died as well. Those who were still alive had joined other forces. In the blink of an eye, they had all become lonely ghosts. However, in the eyes of Yushu and the others, these people were all delicious steamed buns. Yushu and the leaders of the other forces immediately came forward to persuade them, hoping to take them under their command. Not long after, most of them found a new place to go. Yushu also recruited 1 person, and there were only 2 people left who didn't want to go anywhere. No matter who said it, it was useless. At this time, Leng Shiqi saw the appearance of the 2 people, and his heart stirred as he walked over. He first walked towards the short-haired youth. When the short-haired youth saw Leng Shiqi walking over, his eyes widened, and a complicated expression appeared in his eyes. There was shock, gratitude, and even a touch of piety. The short-haired youth suddenly knelt down on one knee and said, "Subordinate Mu 21, greets Master." When the others saw this scene, they were all shocked. Especially those who had just lobbied the short-haired youth, they all looked at Leng Shiqi in surprise. They simply couldn't understand what was so special about this mysterious man in a black cloak and mask. Without saying a word, he had subdued such a spirit cultivator of the pure spirit realm. Leng Shiqi patted Mu 21's shoulder, indicating for him to get up, and then walked to the black-faced youth beside him. The black-faced youth was blood is no different. Back then, he had stopped Leng Shiqi by himself to buy time for Bailey Qing to escape. Leng Shiqi saw that he was a loyal and righteous person, so he didn't kill him. After that, blood is no different knew that Bailey Qing was completely finished. He could be considered to have returned Bailey Qing's life, and then went to the fog area to join the battle sect. Who would have thought that not long after, the battle sect would also be gone? This made him sigh in his heart. He had already given up on the idea of joining another force and planned to be a lone ranger. Seeing Mu 21 kneel at the feet of this person, blood is no different was also very surprised. But he still said, "There's no need to waste your breath, I won't join any force. To tell you the truth, the 2 forces I joined have been destroyed. I'm afraid I'm an inauspicious person. If you're not afraid, continue to recruit me." After saying that, blood is no different crossed his arms and put on a look of indifference. Leng Shiqi walked in front of him and whispered in his ear, "Bailey Qing saved your life, and you risked your life to stop me for him. Then if I let you go and work for me, you shouldn't have any complaints, right?" Blood is no difference's body trembled when he heard this. His heart thumped, and his eyes revealed a look of shock. He said in a low voice, You are. Leng Shiqi made a shushing gesture and said, "Think about it. Blood is no different struggled in his heart. I'm a very unlucky person. The people I'm loyal to are all dead. Aren't you afraid?" Then Leng Shiqi left a sentence in his ear and turned to leave. The expression on blood is no difference's face changed several times, but in the end he still followed Leng Shiqi's footsteps. Everyone looked at Leng Shiqi curiously. They didn't know what he said to blood is no different to make him change his decision. Yushu came back and pestered him for a long time before he got an answer. At that time, Leng Shiqi only said one sentence, "The masters you've been loyal to were all killed by me. I won't kill myself, right?" When these spirit cultivators of the initial pure spirit realm were also divided up, this matter came to an end, and everyone was ready to return home. This time, as long as the forces survived, they didn't lose much, because the number of people who died was made up in the end. There were even some forces that had more people than before. For example, the Yushu clan. This time, they came with a total of more than 80 people, but when they returned, there were more than 100 people. The number of spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm did not change. In addition, they also obtained a large amount of cultivation resources. It could be said that they made a lot of money. Blood Moon and Seiji were about the same. From today onwards, everyone recognized that the 3 strongest forces on Blood Mist Island were Yushu clan, Blood Moon, and Seiji. After resting for a while, everyone prepared to leave. At this time, Leng Shichi noticed that Qinglian muttered a few words in the ears of Delta Origi, and then Delta Origi hurriedly left with her people. His thoughts raced, and finally, his gaze fell on Blood is no different. Then, Leng Shichi found Yushu and Blood is no different and told them his thoughts. When the two of them heard it, Yushu immediately revealed an excited expression, and Blood is no different hesitated for a moment before nodding. A moment later, the entire Yushu clan left and went straight to the battle sex camp. Chapter 78. A day later, the Yushu clan members returned to the camp in the withered forest with a large amount of supplies. Originally, they didn't need to take so long, but they were delayed in the misty area. The first reason was to plunder the resources of the Gate of Battle. The second reason was to fulfill the promise of working together. He gave the meridian-impacting sword Qi to Wuqing and Wuxin to study for half a day, and also gave them some cultivation resources. During this time, Yushu also faintly revealed that he wanted the Dual Heroes Hall to merge with the Yushu clan, but Wu Qing and Wu Xian were obviously unwilling and only declined, saying that they needed to think about it. After returning to the Yushu clan and settling everything, Leng Shichi continued to return to the cave to cultivate. He still left Ziyu in the Yushu clan to pass on the message. The first thing he did when he returned to the cave was to sleep. This trip didn't take long, and it only took about 3 days to go back and forth. However, the previous continuous battles put a great burden on Leng Shichi. Even on the way back, he was extremely vigilant. After a long and comfortable sleep, Leng Shichi began to take inventory of his harvest. First was the pure spirit pill he obtained from killing the soul master puppets. As long as he took a pure spirit pill, Leng Shichi could immediately break through to the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. However, Leng Shichi's cultivation had reached the limit of the 5th level of the pure spirit realm after a long period of fighting. As long as he calmed down and cultivated, he would be able to break through to the 6th level of the pure spirit realm in 2 or 3 days. After thinking for a while, Leng Shichi still decided to rely on himself to break through. No matter how good the pure spirit pill was, it was still an external item in the end. It was just much better than refining demon blood. Leng Shichi was still worried about relying on external items to break through. In any case, he didn't plan to go out for a while and just cultivated steadily. It wouldn't be too late to refine the pure spirit pill after reaching the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. Putting the pills aside, Leng Shichi took out 2 secret manuals from his bosom. These 2 secret manuals had been plundered from the Dozhan Sex camp. One of them was the Rank 2 cultivation technique, 8 stones horizontal training technique, which was Zhang Zhiga's main cultivation technique. What was different from the rest was that this was actually a body refining technique. Different from the various characteristics of other cultivation methods, this cultivation method constantly tempered the body, making the body as strong as a spirit weapon. After cultivating it, you don't need to use any spirit tools because your entire body is a spirit tool. Furthermore, the greatest benefit of cultivating this technique was that one didn't have to rely too much on spiritual energy. For example, Zhang Zhiga, even if all the spirit energy in his body was used up, his physical strength alone was enough to contend against a spirit cultivator at the 5th or 6th level of the spirit gathering realm. As for Leng Shichi, every time he cultivated a spiritual technique in the gray space, his body would be strengthened in various ways. Therefore, the strength of his body was not considered weak, and cultivating this kind of body-refining cultivation method would be relatively smooth. Therefore, Leng Shiqi decided to start cultivating this technique later. As for the other thing he obtained from the Dozhan sect, Leng Shiqi felt a little surprised. This thing was the rank 2 spiritual technique, Heavy Cross Spear. It was Bailey Qing's signature move. Leng Shiqi also learned from blood is no different that this spiritual technique was originally obtained by Zhan Zhige. At that time, Bailey Qing had spent a lot of money to exchange for it from Zhan Zhige. Leng Shiqi had personally experienced the power of this spiritual technique, and it was indeed a powerful spiritual technique. He simply called out the system and directly cultivated the Heavy Cross Spear to the Great Perfection realm. Next, Leng Shiqi also conveniently cultivated the rank 3 spiritual technique, Impacting Meridian Sword Qi. In addition, there was also the rank 3 technique, Moonlight Cloud Scripture. Leng Shiqi did not take this technique, but left it for Yushu. Of course, he also secretly learned it. Now, Leng Shiqi had 2 rank 3 techniques. The Beast Vitality Demon technique was explosive, and the Moonlight Cloud Scripture was abnormally fine. The two complemented each other. Finally, Leng Shiqi finally took out the medicine bottle wrapped in golden light. His expression was slightly serious. He pulled out the stopper, and immediately, a refreshing medicinal fragrance wafted out, causing Leng Shiqi to tremble. He turned the medicine bottle over, and immediately, 3 pills of different colors rolled out. Strangely, the surface of these 3 pills was covered in a faint layer of light. The color of the light was different, and they were respectively white, green, and red. Leng Shiqi touched it lightly, and the light flowed faintly, peeling off from the pills. Then, it floated in the air and formed 3 short words. Rank 4 pill, Bone Refining and Qi Nourishing Pill. After refining, it can greatly increase the power of Qi and blood. Rank 4 pill, Stainless Marrow Cleansing Pill. It can cleanse the marrow and improve the aptitude. Rank 4 pill, Blood Explosion Pill. After taking it, it will quickly burn the blood essence, and the combat power will greatly increase in a short period of time. The side effects are serious, use with caution. Leng Shiqi carefully looked at these words, and also understood the use of these 3 pills. He murmured, "This blood explosion pill is a bit similar to the pill Zhan Zhige took before he died." Then Leng Shiqi lowered his head and pondered, thinking about how to use these 3 pills. Needless to say, the blood explosion pill must be hidden first. This was something that would only be used in a desperate situation. It could be regarded as a trump card. As for the other 2 pills, Leng Shiqi planned to take the Stainless Marrow Cleansing Pill first to cleanse the marrow and improve the aptitude. It could also help him break through to the 6th level of the Pure Spirit Realm. After breaking through to the 6th level of the Pure Spirit Realm, he would take the Bone Refining and Qi Nourishing Pill. At that time, combined with the 8 Stones Horizontal Training Technique, he would definitely be able to cultivate this technique to a very high level in a short period of time. With a plan, Leng Shiqi adjusted his state, restrained his thoughts, and picked up the white pill and swallowed it. After the Stainless Marrow Cleansing Pill entered his mouth, it turned into countless tiny particles and merged into Leng Shiqi's blood. Then he felt a tingling sensation all over his body, which was quite comfortable. But gradually, the tingling sensation turned into soreness, and finally into soreness. However, Leng Shiqi didn't make a sound. This pain was nothing to him. This pain lasted for about the time it took to burn a stick of incense before it disappeared. Leng Shiqi opened his eyes and looked down. He found that his body didn't seem to have changed much. He felt that a layer of sticky film had appeared on the surface of his body. He immediately used his spiritual power to purify it. Then he felt his whole body become lighter. When he looked carefully, some of the original scars on his body had faded a little. Other than that, there didn't seem to be any changes. Leng Shiqi pondered for a moment, then sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. After a while, Leng Shiqi frowned. He had just cultivated to see if there were any changes in his cultivation speed. In fact, his cultivation speed had increased, but the increase could be described as negligible. At this time, Leng Shiqi helplessly sighed and muttered, "Is this really a rank 4 pill? Is this all?" At this moment, Lung Shiqi deeply doubted whether this was a rank 4 pill or not. But then he suddenly thought of another possibility. That was that his talent was very high. Rank 4 marrow cleansing pills no longer had any effect on him. The more Lung Shiqi thought about it, the more likely it was. He admitted that he relied on the system's unlimited skill points to cultivate his spiritual skills. But in terms of cultivating spiritual power, he believed that his talent was definitely not bad. Thinking of this, Lung Shiqi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head, threw all the distracting thoughts out of his mind, and honestly cultivated. It was better to cultivate to the 6th level of the pure spirit realm as soon as possible. Chapter 79. Lung Shiqi quietly cultivated in the cave, but the Blood Mist Island was not quiet. In this battle, from the initial 19 forces, there were only 13 left. A total of 6 forces had been destroyed in an instant. Among them, the Cult of the Blood Sea and the Thousand Mountains Alliance were also included. These forces no longer existed, so their original territories became ownerless, and battles were inevitable. At this time, Yushu was casually sitting in the main seat of the tent, looking at the 6 pure spirit realm subordinates in front of him, and he could not help but feel a little high-spirited. The battle this time was so dangerous and intense, but the number of Yushu clan members did not decrease, but instead increased, and they even brought back a large amount of cultivation resources. After a period of time, after digesting these resources, the strength of Yushu clan would definitely increase by another wave. In this way, Yushu's heart was no longer satisfied with the withered forest. There were 2 areas connected to the withered forest, and the right was the misty area. At this time, there was only one force in the misty area, the Twin Heroes Hall. Although they could be considered to have occupied an area, all the resources of the battle sect had been taken away by the Yushu clan, and the time for the next eruption of resources had not yet arrived. Therefore, the Twin Heroes Hall was still at a low point, and it was a good choice to make a move. On the left side of the withered forest was the desert, and there were 2 forces there, and the key point was that these 2 forces still existed. However, what was interesting was that the area on the left side of the desert, the Wind Valley, was an ownerless land. The 2 forces in the desert were fighting for that area, and if the Yushu clan suddenly intervened, they might be able to catch them off guard. Left or right? Yushu hesitated. 3 days later, in the cave. Boom! Lung Shiqi, who was already at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm, punched the wall, and the force of the punch burst out, immediately creating a small hole. Withdrawing his fist, Lung Shiqi nodded in satisfaction. He didn't use any spiritual power in his punch just now. It was purely his physical strength that made the small crater. He roughly estimated that his current physical strength was comparable to a spirit cultivator at the 5th or 6th level of the spirit assembly realm. In other words, Lung Shiqi's physical strength was comparable to Zhang Zhiga's after 3 days of cultivation. Of course, this was also because he had swallowed the bone refining and qi nourishing pill. That pill allowed Lung Shiqi to truly feel the effects of a tier 4 pill. It allowed his bones, tendons, meridians, qi and blood to improve tremendously. With the help of the 8 stones horizontal training skill, he was able to reach his current realm. Furthermore, Lung Shiqi calculated that if he cultivated the 8 stones horizontal training technique to the highest realm, just the strength of his physical body would be enough to fight against a spirit cultivator who had just entered the pure spirit realm. However, there would be no more bone refining and qi nourishing pills for him to eat. If he wanted to continue cultivating the 8 stones horizontal training technique, he would have to temper his body step by step. Exhaling, Lung Shiqi called out the system and looked at his information. Name: Lung Shiqi, Lu Xingji, Cultivation, 6th level of the Pure Spirit Realm Cultivation Technique. Tier 3 Cultivation Technique Moonlight Cloud Codex. Tier 3 Cultivation Technique Beast Origin Demon Breaking Technique Bloodline. Spiritual Skills. Tier 2 Spiritual Skill Wave Breaking Fist Perfection Tier 2 Spiritual Skill Ghost Archery Perfection Tier 2 Spiritual Skill Gale / Perfection Tier 2 Spiritual Skill Heavy Cross Spear Perfection Tier 3 Spiritual Skill Pulse Breaking Sword Chi Perfection Special Spiritual Skill Hand of the Earth Perfection Special Spiritual Skill Chakra Walking Technique Perfection System Coins 112 Ling Shichi looked at his information. Compared to the last time he left, there were more Heavy Cross Spear, Moonlight Cloud Codex, and Pulse Breaking Sword Chi. Unfortunately, the system coins didn't increase at all. The main reason was that he couldn't sell the items to the system in front of so many people. Fortunately, Ling Shichi didn't plan to draw anymore because the basic prizes were starting to not satisfy him. Ling Shichi now had 2 Tier 3 spiritual weapons, 2 Tier 3 cultivation techniques, a Tier 3 spiritual skill, and a Tier 4 medicinal pill. He didn't believe that the system's basic lottery would give him Tier 3 items or even better. It could be said that the current lottery system couldn't allow Ling Shichi to quickly improve his strength anymore. Speaking of strength, Ling Shichi felt that the biggest gain from this trip was actually comprehending the waning moonlight slash. He was still amazed by the power of the waning moonlight slash. In terms of explosive power alone, it was completely superior to lustful chaotic flowers. It was just that this move consumed a lot of spiritual power and put a lot of burden on the spiritual weapon. Fortunately, his Tier 3 spiritual sword could still support it. Now, Ling Shichi had comprehended a spiritual skill that completely fused the sword and the saber. The Tiger Breaking 3 Waves Fist didn't count as that was only a clever combination of several spiritual skills. It was still one step away from complete fusion. Next, Ling Shichi's goal was to completely fuse the Tiger Breaking 3 Waves Fist and strengthen Lustful Chaotic Flowers. He intended to fuse the newly learned Pulse Unblocking Sword Chi into Lustful Chaotic Flowers, but Ling Shichi didn't plan to do it behind closed doors. The fusion of the waning moonlight slash made Ling Shichi realize one thing, and that was that it seemed to be able to comprehend spiritual skills faster in battle. But at the moment, there was nothing worth doing. At this moment, Ling Shichi's mind suddenly flashed. Since there was nothing to do, then he might as well do something. He immediately thought of something and took out 2 palm-sized cards. The cards were white and blue, and they were different. The white one was a mission card, and the blue one was an instance card. They were all from the previous lottery. Ling Shichi pondered for a moment and picked up the white mission card. With a surge of spiritual power, the card immediately turned into a white light screen. A few lines of information appeared in front of his eyes. Activated mission card, primary. Randomly generating mission, mission generated, primary mission, command 3 areas of the Blood Fog Island. Mission time limit, 1 month. Mission reward, 1 intermediate lottery, level 1 index card. Mission progress, 33%. Ling Shichi looked at the information and his eyes kept flashing. A few thoughts flashed through his mind. This mission generation is a bit interesting. It's actually related to me. This means that the system actually knows about the outside world. In other words, the system seems to have a consciousness. Thinking of this, Ling Shichi's vigilance towards the system increased. Fortunately, this mission doesn't have a failure penalty. If the system killed the host, I wouldn't want to be manipulated by it even if I didn't want the system. The mission progress shows that I've completed 33%. It should be the Yushu clan. So, I only need to secretly control 3 areas to complete the mission. Expanding my force is imperative. I originally had this plan, so I can go with the flow. If that's the case... While Ling Shichi was thinking, Ziyu flew back and brought the message from Yushu. Ling Shichi opened it and found that Yushu was already preparing to fight for territory. However, the target was still hesitating and wanted to ask for his opinion. His eyes flashed a few times and he whispered to himself, "If I want to expand, I have to get rid of future troubles. It seems that I have to go find the Delta Origi again." Chapter 80. The next day, in the stone forest. In Delta Origi's tent, a man's figure quietly appeared. Seeing Ling Shichi suddenly appear, Delta Origi's eyes twitched, and she said in a displeased tone, "Can't you say hello the next time you come? Be careful next time." Lung Shichi came out from the ground and said embarrassedly. Delta Origi sat on the chair and asked in an unfriendly tone, "You said that you would consider joining Blood Moon. After so long, what's your answer?" Lung Shichi smiled bitterly and replied, "Me joining Blood Moon is actually restricting the two of us. Now that I'm secretly controlling Yushu clan, isn't it better?" "That's true. All right, thank you for last time." Delta Origi's tone softened. Lung Shichi naturally knew that Delta Origi was talking about him blocking the mutated demonic beast. He shook his head and said, "There's no need to be polite between us. This time, I came to find you for an urgent matter. Your Yushu clan can be said to be the strongest force now. What urgent matter can there be?" Delta Origi raised her eyebrows in surprise. What she said was indeed true. Now, there were only 13 forces left on Blood Mist Island. Among them, the strongest were Yushu clan, Blood Moon, and Seiji. These three forces all had cultivators above the 5th level of the pure spirit realm. But Yushu clan had 2 experts at the 5th level of the pure spirit realm. Although Delta Origi was at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm, in the previous battle, Lung Shichi disguised as Dark Crow was even stronger than the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. In addition, there was also Yushu, the gang leader at the 5th level of the pure spirit realm. He also had several pure spirit realm cultivators and more than 100 spirit assembly realm cultivators under him. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the Yushu clan was the strongest power on Blood Mist Island. Lung Shichi agreed with the Delta Origi and continued, "That's why the Yushu clan only occupies a withered forest. Isn't that a little too small?" Delta Origi looked at Lung Shichi in surprise. In her impression, he was not a very ambitious person. She could guess that the reason why Lung Shichi secretly controlled the Yushu clan was not because he was greedy for power, but because he wanted to save time and effort to cultivate. But from his words, it seemed that he wanted to expand his sphere of influence. "You don't have to look at me like that. The more territory I occupy, the more cultivation resources I will have. I'm guessing that you also have the same idea." Lung Shichi shrugged. "That's right, I do have such a plan. If that's the case, why don't we work together?" "How do we work together?" "You help me destroy the Twin Heroes Hall and occupy the Misty area. I help you destroy the Green Lotus Gang and take over the wetlands. When the time comes, we can have our backs against each other and attack the other areas with all our strength." Lung Shichi's voice was neither fast nor slow, but Delta Origi's eyes blazed when she heard these words. However, Delta Origi immediately frowned and said, "But a few days ago, after the Bone Ring died, the Green Lotus Gang offered all the resources of the Silver Ring stronghold and asked for my protection. I agreed." Hearing this, Lung Shichi stroked his chin and pondered. Gradually, a plan formed in his mind. 2 days later, Delta Origi's Blood Moon and the Green Lotus Gang gathered in front of the Twin Heroes Hall's camp. At this time, Wu Qing and Wu Xian's faces were ashen. They really didn't expect Blood Moon to attack them. Not to mention the fact that Blood Moon had more people than them, just Delta Origi was at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. Who could stop them? Even if the two brothers worked together, they wouldn't have the slightest advantage. In addition, Blood Moon also pulled in the Green Lotus Gang. Wu Qing and Wu Xian were already in despair. Wu Qing whispered to Wu Xian, "How's that matter going?" "Big brother, don't worry. He's already successfully escaped. That kid is very fast. He'll be able to reach the Yushu clan soon. We just need to hold on until the Yushu clan arrives." Wu Xian replied, "Sigh, I shouldn't have rejected Yushu back then. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this mess today. In the end, I still have to use the Twin Heroes Hall as a benefit to exchange for a chance of survival. I really regret it." Wu Qing sighed and said in a deep voice. However, he immediately straightened his face and shouted to Delta Origi, "Blood Moon's Moon Lord, we did have some grudges in the past, but we also worked together in the battle in the wetlands. How did the Twin Heroes Hall offend Blood Moon that the Moon Lord would make such a big move?" Delta Origi's expression was cold as she said softly, "You blocked my path, that's all." Her tone was very calm, but it was this calmness that caused the hearts of the twin heroes' hall to turn cold. Wu Qing could deeply feel the contempt in Delta Origi's words. "You blocked my path, so I'll destroy you as casually as kicking away a stone next to my foot." Wu Qing's heart was immediately filled with humiliation and helplessness. Is there really no room to maneuver? You should know that if you want to swallow my twin heroes' hall, don't be afraid of bursting your stomach. At this moment, Green Lotus stood up and said sternly, "Wu Qing, Wu Exin, don't make a pointless struggle. The Moon Lord has personally come, so your fate is already sealed. If you take the initiative to commit suicide and let your disciples join the Blood Moon, you can still save their lives. Otherwise, rivers of blood will flow today." Wu Exion's face turned red. He was just about to curse when Wu Qing stopped him. When Wu Qing saw the smug look on Green Lotus' face, he also wanted to give her a big slap. She was just a little smart. She took the initiative to offer up the resources of the Silver Ring stronghold and climbed up the tree that was the Blood Moon. Now, he could even point fingers in front of them. The more he thought about it, the more he regretted not agreeing to submit to the Yushu clan. Submitting to the strong was not shameful. Unfortunately, he only understood this problem now. Delta Origi spoke at this moment. "Green Lotus is right. If you two brothers are willing to commit suicide, I can spare the others." As soon as she finished speaking, the crowd in the Twin Heroes' hall broke out into a discussion. Wu Qing and Wu Exine were stunned. Delta Origi's words had directly disrupted their morale. However, Delta Origi's next words made them feel a little strange. "I'll give you 5 minutes to consider. Once the time is up, your lives will no longer be in your own hands." After Delta Origi finished speaking, she stood on the spot and closed her eyes to rest. Green Lotus was also stunned. She was about to say something to Delta Origi, but when she saw that she had closed her eyes and did not want to talk to anyone, she obediently shut her mouth. She knew when to speak and when not to. Wu Qing and Wu Qing looked at each other and saw a glimmer of hope in each other's eyes. Gu San's decision had instead bought them an entire incense stick's worth of time. They could use this time to stabilize their morale and wait for the Yushu clan's support. Chapter 81. The time it takes for a stick of incense to burn was extremely precious to the Dual Heroes Hall. For some people, time passed very quickly. For example, Qinglian, she was only absent-minded for a while, fantasizing about how much benefit she could get this time, and time passed quickly. But for Wu Qing and Wu Exin, every minute and every second was extremely torturous. From time to time, they would look into the distance, hoping that someone would come over. But no. The time it takes for a stick of incense to burn was up. Delta Origi opened her eyes, and a shocking killing intent flashed in her bright eyes. She said coldly, "Stubborn, get ready to attack. Qinglian, you lead the charge." When Qinglian heard this, the complacent expression on her face immediately disappeared, and she turned to look at Delta Origi. When she saw Delta Origi's eyes filled with killing intent and coldness, she turned her head again. Qinglian's expression was uncertain. Finally, she gritted her teeth and shouted, "Kill!" Then, she led the people from the Azure Lotus gang to take the lead and kill. She understood that the reason Delta Origi brought her along this time was to reduce the damage to Blood Moon. Using the lives of her people to reduce the damage to Blood Moon. But since she had chosen this path, she could only walk it to the end. Wu Qing and Wu Exine, on the other hand, rushed over with calm faces. After the two groups of people collided, the people from Blood Moon rushed up. As for Delta Origi, she walked slowly at the back, her footsteps light, as if she was taking a stroll. Wu Qing and Qinglian exchanged blows, and the other pure spirit realm cultivators also found opponents of the same level. However, Blood Moon had 2 more pure spirit realm cultivators than the Dual Heroes Hall, and those 2 people crazily killed their way into the crowd of spirit gathering realm cultivators. In the blink of an eye, several people from the Dual Heroes Hall died. After the puppet battle, there were only about 50 people left in the Dual Heroes Hall. Originally, they planned to accumulate cultivation resources in the fog area and walk the path of elites. Unfortunately, before they could get their cultivation resources, they were met with the joint attack of Blood Moon and the Azure Lotus Gang. Wu Qing's heart bled as he watched his men being killed one by one. However, what made him despair was the Delta Origi. At this moment, Delta Origi, dressed in a pure white dress, slowly walked over like a fairy under the moonlight. But in Wu Qing's eyes, this was clearly an impermanence from the netherworld, coming to steal his soul. This kind of psychological pressure was even greater than the pressure Qinglian gave him during the fight. Not long after Blood Moon's people arrived, the twin heroes' hall began to crumble. Wu Qing and Wu Xian seemed to have foreseen their defeat. Just as they were feeling hopeless, a clear voice came from afar. "Stop! Listen to me. This voice, it's Yu Shu." Wu Qing and Wu Xian recognized Yu Shu's voice. Boundless hope rose in their hearts, and their swords became even sharper. After the ruthless sword forced Qinglian to retreat, he also withdrew. When Delta Origi saw Yu Shu arrive, she knew that the plan had reached the next step. She immediately said, "Stop." Delta Origi gave the order, and all the Blood Moon and Qinglian gang members hurriedly retreated. Wu Qing and Wu Qing finally breathed a sigh of relief. When they turned around, they saw Yu Shu rushing over with 4 pure spirit realm cultivators and dozens of spirit assembly realm cultivators. Yu Shu was the first to arrive. He stood beside Wu Qing and nodded. Then he smiled at Delta Origi and said, "Blood Moon's Moon Lord, how have you been? If you have something to say, say it." Delta Origi did not give him a good look. Yu Shu's smile immediately disappeared, but he still said calmly, "Moon Lord, you may not know, but the Twin Heroes Hall has become a subordinate force of the Yushu clan not long ago. You attacking the Twin Heroes Hall is equivalent to attacking the Yushu clan. Seeing that Moon Lord does not know, I will let today's matter go. You and I are still allies." Nonsense. Qinglian heard and immediately shouted, "When did the Twin Heroes Hall submit to the Yushu clan? Why didn't we know? Besides, if it's true, why didn't the Twin Heroes Hall mention the Yushu clan in the beginning to make us afraid?" Qinglian felt that this was the time for her to play her role, so she stepped forward and said these words. However, she did not expect that the answer she got was Yushu's blade. To be more precise, before Qinglian's voice fell, Yushu had already rushed over at a high speed. When Qinglian realized it, Yushu's blade had already slashed out. A sharp blade slashed out. Qinglian stabbed several times, but she was unable to block the blade. At this moment, her face finally turned pale with fright. She only had time to place her spirit sword in front of her. In the next moment, there was a "ka" sound, and the spirit sword broke. But at the same time, the blade was finally exhausted. And Yu Shu held the hilt of the blade and placed it on Qinglian's neck. Qinglian was so scared that her beautiful face turned pale. Layers of cold sweat flowed from her forehead and dripped to the ground. Yu Shu's face was full of killing intent, and he said coldly, "I am talking to the Moon Lord. Who are you to interrupt?" "Unkoff, Moon Lord." Qinglian looked at Delta Origi pitifully, but she did not dare to speak loudly for fear of touching the blade. Delta Origi looked at Yu Shu at this moment and said lightly, "I haven't seen you for a few days, and you have improved a lot." Yu Shu's face suddenly changed, and he smiled proudly. In these few days, because he practiced the rank 3 cultivation technique Moonlight Cloud Codex, his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. He had faintly touched the threshold of the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. He was indeed much stronger than a few days ago. But compared to Delta Origi, he still paled in comparison. So he smiled and said, "Compared to the Moon Lord, my cultivation is not worth mentioning. I can tell the difference very clearly. It's just that the Moon Lord subordinates can't tell the difference." Yu Shu said as he waved the hilt of the blade twice, scaring Qinglian into a panic. "Let go of Qinglian." "Sure, but do you have a reason for that? What reason do you want?" "Take her away, and we will still be allies." "What if I say no?" Will you make an enemy of Blood Moon for a Twin Heroes Hall? Delta Origi glanced at Wu Qing and Wu Exin, a little amused. Hearing this, Wu Qing and Wu Xian's heart sank. Yes, would Yushu make an enemy of Blood Moon for them? If it were them, they would probably choose to ally with Blood Moon. Then what choice would Yushu make? Their lives were now in Yushu's hands. Ha! Yushu suddenly laughed out loud and said, Delta Origi, you underestimate me too much. Today, I will protect the Twin Heroes Hall. This is the promise I made to them. You don't understand the feelings between men. Wu Qing and Wu Exen were touched when they heard this. They really didn't expect Yushu to make such a choice. If they could survive today, they would no longer have any objections if they submitted to the Yushu clan. Delta Origi's eyes couldn't help but twitch a few times. She was almost disgusted to death by Yushu, but her face revealed a murderous intent, and she said coldly, Is that so? Before Delta Origi finished speaking, her figure suddenly disappeared in front of Yushu's eyes. In the next moment, Delta Origi's figure shot out, leaving behind afterimages. In the blink of an eye, she passed by Yushu and strangely appeared behind Wu Qing. Her soft sword had already pierced Wu Qing's heart. She said indifferently, You can't protect the people I want to kill. Chapter 82. Wu Qing looked at the silver sword piercing his heart in horror, his face full of disbelief. Just a moment ago, he was still fantasizing about being able to live, and now he was at the end of his life. Most importantly, Delta Origi's attack was too sudden, too fast, and too strange. He didn't expect Delta Origi to attack at all, but he still had a trump card he hadn't used yet. He was unwilling to die just like that. But no matter how unwilling he was, he couldn't change his fate. A chill quickly engulfed his entire body, including his consciousness. After a few breaths, Wu Qing was completely silent. In these few breaths, everyone was stunned. Some were shocked, some were surprised, some were terrified, and some felt that it was inconceivable. But that was how things were. Delta Origi circled around Yushu in the blink of an eye and killed Wu Qing. Even Yushu himself was stunned. This time, he wasn't faking it, he was truly stunned. The first to react were Wu Xian and Qinglian. Qinglian took advantage of Yushu's stunned state to hurriedly retreat, escaping from Yushu's blade. Wu Xian also retreated with a pale face. At this time, Yushu finally regained his senses. Delta Origi's move had really frightened him. Thus, Yushu's face sank, and he said word by word, Delta Origi, do we really have to go this far? The moment you appeared here, you were destined to go this far. Delta Origi shook her head slightly. Yushu raised his head and said angrily, Do you really think I'm afraid of you? The Yushu clan's people immediately attacked. Delta Origi's flexible sword shook and faced Yushu head-on, ignoring Wu Exin. Delta Origi's attack was like an order. Blood Moon and the Green Lotus Gang's people also attacked. The various factions were instantly thrown into chaos. However, if one took a closer look, they would realize that almost all the members of the Yushu clan were surrounding and killing the members of the Green Lotus Gang. On the other hand, Blood Moon's members attacked the members of Twin Heroes Hall. People were dying every moment on the battlefield, but no one noticed that 80% of the dead were from the Green Lotus Gang and the Twin Heroes Hall. Delta Origi and Yushu opened up a separate battlefield, and no one else was involved in their battle. After a while, Delta Origi winked at Yushu. Then, Yushu was sent flying with an ouch. Blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth, but a smile appeared on his face as he shouted, Delta Origi, you are indeed very strong. I can't beat you. What a pity, your brain isn't very good. We've been fighting for so long, don't tell me you haven't noticed anything wrong? Delta Origi thought for a moment, then her expression suddenly changed, and she said in a cold voice, Dark Crow. Dark Crow isn't here, where is he? Ha, you only remembered now? You're really stupid. I'm afraid that Blood Moon's base will be destroyed by now. What? You dare? Delta Origi was furious, but she immediately controlled her emotions and shouted at Qinglian, Qinglian, take the members of the Green Lotus gang and retreat first. Even if Yushu is telling the truth, Blood Moon's camp still has a trump card. Dark Crow won't be able to succeed so quickly. Go back and help, I'll hold them back. Qinglian's face immediately showed some gratitude. At this point in the battle, she had already discovered that more than half of her subordinates had died. Delta Origi telling her to go back first was equivalent to letting her preserve her strength and put herself in danger. Qinglian immediately agreed. Don't worry, Moon Master, I'll go back and help the camp. I won't let Dark Crow succeed. Qinglian then led her subordinates out of the battlefield and ran towards the stone forest. Delta Origi no longer fought with Yushu and turned to kill Wu Exin. Qinglian brought her people to the boundary between the misty area and the stone forest. Suddenly she stopped. She saw that not far away, there were 30 to 40 figures standing in the mist. She could feel a faint killing intent before they even got close, and it was obvious that they didn't come with good intentions. Her heart couldn't help but sink. This time, she came out with about 40 people with Delta Origi, and it could be said that she brought 70% of the Green Lotus gang's fighting strength. However, after a round of battle, there were only a dozen or so people left. She was already heartbroken, and the current scene made her feel even more hopeless. Qinglian took a deep breath and said, I wonder where. But before she could finish, she shut her mouth. At this time, a mysterious person covered in a black cloak and wearing a dark golden mask walked over. That person held a saber in his right hand, and the saber blade flickered with spiritual light, as if it was a black impermanence that came out of the underworld to take lives. Dark Crow. Qinglian stuttered, and her heart was filled with fear. During the Battle of Puppets, she saw with her own eyes that Dark Crow cut off the 4 sharp claws of the mutated demonic beast with one slash, and then held back the demonic beast with his own strength. She also saw Dark Crow kill Shui Wuhai, who was at the 6th level of the Pure Spirit Realm, and Zhang Zhiga, who went all out. Dark Crow's strength was recognized as strong. And after a battle, Qinglian didn't have enough spiritual power in her body, so she had no chance of winning. Of course, even if she was at her peak, she still wouldn't have a chance of winning. But Qinglian still had a glimmer of hope, and that was that Dark Crow didn't come to kill her. She quickly said, Dark Crow, listen to me. It's Blood Moon and Delta Origi that want to become enemies with your Yushu clan. I'm just a dog by her side, and I have no choice but to do so. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. You should go find Delta Origi. Leng Shiqi felt that her words were a bit ridiculous, but he didn't say anything. He waved his left hand, and the 30 to 40 people behind him quickly surrounded the people of Qinglian gang. No, don't kill me. I can rely on the Yushu clan. I know Blood Moon's camp, and I know Delta Origi's arrangements. I can help you destroy Blood Moon's camp. Qinglian said in a panic, hoping to show her value in exchange for her life. But the answer she got was another saber ray. She was very familiar with this saber ray, because not long ago, she had personally experienced its power. This saber ray was also very unfamiliar to her, because it was much stronger than the one Yushu had released. After a few breaths, Qinglian's stiff body fell to the ground, and her face was still filled with reluctance to leave this world. As for the other members of the Qinglian gang, they naturally went to accompany her. Leng Shiqi put away his saber and muttered, the outcome has been decided. On the other side, Wu Exin had already died under the sword of Delta Origi on the battlefield of Twin Heroes Hall. The 2 leaders of Twin Heroes Hall had died, and the members of Twin Heroes Hall were all ashen-faced. Brother Wu Exin, Yushu shouted in grief and indignation, Delta Origi. You and I can't exist under the same sky. What can you do to me? Delta Origi coldly replied. I can't do anything to you now, but you have to think clearly. So what if you take down the Haze district? Blood Moon has occupied 2 districts at the same time, so how many people can you send to guard the Haze district? You have to remember that I will always be watching you. As long as you are not here, I will lead people to attack the Haze district and make you lose more than you gain. Yushu said with a crazy expression. Delta Origi's face couldn't help but sink when she heard this. She hesitated for a moment, then finally waved her hand and shouted, Retreat! Immediately, the people of Blood Moon withdrew from the battlefield in an orderly manner, and the people of Yushu clan didn't stop them. At this time, there were only 20 to 30 people left in Twin Heroes Hall, and there wasn't a single spirit cultivator in the pure spirit realm. It could be said that they were no longer a force to be reckoned with. Although they were lucky to have survived, they were also a little confused. Where should they go from here? With Twin Heroes Hall's current strength, any faction could easily destroy them, so they had to seek protection. At this moment, someone suddenly appeared and said, "The Jade Gang's ideology is as high as the sky. In order to protect us, they didn't hesitate to fight to the death with Blood Moon. I suggest that everyone join the Yushu clan and fight against Blood Moon together." Yes, I agree. I am also willing to join. Join the Yushu clan and fight against Blood Moon together. Yushu secretly smiled when he saw this. Chapter 83. When Leng Shiqi brought people back to the Yushu clan, Yushu hurriedly pulled him over and said excitedly, "Brother Leng, wonderful, truly wonderful. We destroyed the Twin Heroes Hall without any effort. Yushu admires us. Now that we have occupied 2 areas, we just have to wait for the next eruption of cultivation resources to pick them up. This is great." Leng Shiqi glanced at him and said, "It's only 2 areas, and you're so happy?" Yushu opened his mouth wide when he heard this, and immediately hugged Leng Shiqi's arm, his big face smiling like a chrysanthemum. "Brother, you're my big brother. What do you mean by this? Is it what I think it is? Why do I have the urge to kneel down?" Leng Shiqi was a little speechless as he pulled his arm away and said sternly, "These few days, settle down the people from the Twin Heroes Hall who have come to seek refuge with us, and try to separate them as much as possible. Also, don't be stingy with distributing the commonly used cultivation resources, and quickly increase the overall strength of the clan. In any case, it can be replenished the next time the cultivation resources erupt. Also, send more people to inquire about the Sand and Wind Valley, and keep an eye on their movements. If there are any special matters, inform me immediately." Understood. After giving out all the instructions, Leng Shiqi returned to the cave. There were still 3 to 4 days before the next eruption of cultivation resources, and after that, they still had to leave some time to digest the cultivation resources, so there shouldn't be any big problems in the next 10 days. Leng Shiqi then immersed himself in cultivation. He still cultivated spirit energy and comprehended spiritual techniques every day, and during this time, he also slowly refined the 3 pure spirit pills. Since he had 2 kinds of 3rd-rank cultivation methods, his cultivation soon reached the peak of the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. However, if he wanted to continue to break through to the 7th level of the pure spirit realm, there was a huge bottleneck, and it couldn't be broken through in a short time. Therefore, his cultivation fell into a bottleneck. His progress in comprehending spiritual techniques was also quite slow, and although he had some ideas about merging the channel opening sword chi into the chaotic blossom dazzling eyes, he was still missing the final step. His spiritual techniques also didn't improve, which gradually made Leng Shiqi feel a little irritated. Bitter cultivation is useless now. I can only have a breakthrough in battle. But now that the Yushu clan is still accumulating strength, it's not suitable to make a move immediately. If I can't, I can only find monsters to fight. Wait. At this time, Leng Shiqi patted his head and took out the blue instance dungeon card. Since it's an instance card, there will definitely have a battle. Let's give it a try. After that, Leng Shiqi activated the instance dungeon card. Instance card, primary. Randomly generating instance dungeon. Instance generating instance. Beginner dungeon. Spiritual ruins. Initial exploration. Single player. Completion. Defeat the Yushu King time limit. 1 natural day. Immediately, the card instantly bloomed with a large blue light and finally formed a huge light blue door. Leng Shiqi circled the light blue door twice and muttered to himself, "The Yushu instance dungeon seems to be an instance in a game I played a long time ago. I seem to have some impression, but I can't remember the specific details. In short, it's an instance where you kill monsters to level up. But I don't know if it's the real body or the consciousness that enters the instance. If the real body enters, wouldn't it be equivalent to opening up a small world? Forget it, let's not think about it anymore. With the wonders of the system, it wouldn't be surprising if it opened up a small world. Let's prepare first. Then, Leng Shiqi first took out the food and water stored in the system backpack. He didn't notice it before, but when he took it out, it piled up to half the height of a person. Even Leng Shiqi couldn't help but be surprised. He casually picked up a bag and a water bag and tied it to his waist. The time limit for completing the instance dungeon was only 1 day, so he definitely didn't need to bring so many things in. He could completely free up 2 slots in the system backpack. And since he was entering the instance dungeon, there wouldn't be anyone else, so Leng Shiqi could naturally use his full strength. The 2 aspects he was best at now were his sword skills and his sword skills, so he carried the level 3 spirit sword and the spirit saber on his back. He first put the tendon-changing bow and the bow in the system backpack. When Leng Shiqi fought with the Yushu clan, he used the tendon-changing bow and the ghost archery, and the effect was amazing. Later, he specifically asked Yushu to send people to collect the bow and arrows, but unfortunately, only 6 were collected. The other 3 were chopped off by Yushu's saber, while the last one was lost. The remaining 5 slots were respectively filled with a level 2 long spear, a level 2 heavy axe, a blood explosion pill, and 2 other good things that he collected, all of which could be used as trump cards. Finally, he stuffed his body full of spiritual energy recovery and healing pills. After making all the preparations, Leng Shiqi resolutely walked into the light blue door of light. Immediately, Leng Shiqi felt his whole body become lightheaded. His vision turned black and then bright, and the surrounding environment had changed greatly. Leng Shiqi looked around for a moment. The light here was relatively dim, but he had already adapted to it after staying in the cave for a long time. He found himself standing on a high platform, and not far from his feet, there was a small bridge made of vines that connected to the platform on the other side. Looking up, there were a few strange shadows jumping around. At this moment, a deep voice abruptly resounded in the air. Legend has it that the spiritual ruins was originally a boundless forest, and there was a palace of the Beast King in it. However, one night 1,000 years ago, accompanied by a burst of shocking thunder, the forest suddenly withered, and the palace disappeared. Some people found some rare treasures in the ruins, and they said that the palace was underground. So people began to search this land, but there were countless casualties and no results. Gradually, this place became a terrifying forbidden area, and no one dared to approach. The voice disappeared here. Leng Shiqi touched his chin, feeling a little embarrassed. This is the dungeon introduction? There's no need for this. However, it was also because of this that he realized that his real body had indeed entered the dungeon world. I remember that at the beginning of the dungeon, there was a group of small monsters that were purely giving experience. I just don't know what will happen to me here. Leng Shiqi recalled the memories of his previous life and muttered, "Zeng." Then, Leng Shiqi pulled out his spiritual sword and slowly walked across the small bridge of vines. The moment he stepped onto the platform, there was a zzz sound in front of him. Then a group of small black and white monsters that looked like foxes and monkeys jumped over. Lemurs. Leng Shiqi recalled the name of these monsters. These lemurs gathered together, and there were about 20 of them. They all stared at Leng Shiqi with green eyes. Leng Shiqi sensed that these lemurs were just demonic beasts that were not ranked. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 84. Of course, this was only the first wave of monsters, so he still could not let his guard down. Leng Shiqi immediately brandished his spirit sword and charged straight into the group of lemurs. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Leng Shiqi stepped on the black fog and charged into the group of lemurs like a ghost. Sword light flashed, and the lemurs could not even block a single strike. In the blink of an eye, several lemurs died under the sword. However, the other lemurs did not fear death and continued to charge forward. The speed of the lemurs was not slow to begin with. More than 10 lemurs pounced on Leng Shiqi at the same time. Even though Leng Shiqi had 2 perfection stage movement techniques, his body was still cut a few times. However, Leng Shiqi did not care at all. He stabbed out with the whisking willow sword style, and each strike took the life of a lemur. As the number of lemurs decreased, the pressure on Leng Shiqi lessened. It didn't take long for all the lemurs to be killed. Leng Shiqi did not look happy at all. Instead, he looked even more serious. He had deliberately charged into the group of lemurs to test how difficult this first wave was. Now, he looked at the scratches on his body and frowned. If the weakest wave of monsters could injure him, how strong would the monsters behind be? Leng Shiqi felt his heartbeat quicken. Looking ahead, there was excitement in the depths of his eyes. The blood in his body was even boiling. He liked the feeling of challenging the unknown. Leng Shiqi carried his spirit sword and continued forward. There was a stone bridge in front of him, and there was another kind of monster on the bridge, a lynx. The lynx looked like a cheetah, but its 2 black front claws were unusually wide. When it walked on the stone bridge, it left claw marks on the ground. In addition, a pair of fleshy wings that were 2 feet long extended from their shoulders. Although they couldn't fly, they were still able to move very quickly. Leng Shiqi counted carefully. There were 10 lynx wandering on the stone bridge. Judging from the strength of their breaths, they were very close to the first-rank demonic beasts. Against these 10 lynx, Leng Shiqi knew that he could not fight them head-on. He picked up a few pebbles nearby, and with a flick of his finger, the pebbles hit a lynx on the edge of the stone bridge. The lynx immediately turned around and locked onto Leng Shiqi with a pair of reddish-yellow eyes. Immediately, the lynx arched its body and quickly pounced. The lynx was indeed faster than the lemur, but in Leng Shiqi's eyes, it was still a little slow. He moved his feet and dodged the attack. Then he slashed down with his sword, and blood splattered everywhere. However, the lynx did not die. He turned around and clawed at it. Leng Shiqi didn't dodge this time, and his spirit sword pierced the lynx's claws. Poochie! The spirit sword pierced through the claws without losing any of its momentum and even pierced into the lynx's neck. The lynx let out a low howl and fell to the ground. The lynx's skin is indeed thicker than the lemur's, Leng Shiqi muttered to himself, then threw a pebble to attract another lynx. This time, Leng Shiqi directly stabbed out with his sword. Spiritual light flashed on the blade like lightning, killing the lynx in one move. Leng Shiqi then did the same thing, but this time, he attracted 3 lynx. Leng Shiqi did not panic. He used his confusion footwork, and every time he moved, he would stab out with his thunder sword, accurately and ruthlessly killing them. Looking at the last 5 lynx, Leng Shiqi didn't use pebbles to attract them. Instead, he directly rushed forward. The moment Leng Shiqi stepped on the stone bridge, his eyes narrowed. The moment the 5 lynx pounced at him, he entered a strange state. He turned into a few afterimages and passed through the 5 lynx. Almost at the same time, 5 sword rays flashed, mixed with an invisible sword chi. In the blink of an eye, the 5 lynx's necks were suddenly cut open. Their bodies staggered for a few more steps before finally falling to the ground. Leng Shiqi put away his sword and recalled the chaotic blossom dazzling eyes he just used. Even though he tried to integrate the unblocking meridian sword chi into it, unfortunately, only one sword chi was integrated. One had to know that the unblocking meridian sword chi was a level 3 spiritual technique. It was almost impossible to use it multiple times in an instant like blowing the willow. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi had already grasped the knack of it, so there was still hope. After killing these 10 lynx, Leng Shiqi knew that there was no danger for the time being. This was also an important reason why he dared to use the chaotic blossom dazzling eyes. After that, Leng Shiqi did not rush forward. Instead, he took out a spirit stone and recovered his spirit power first. In these 2 battles, he had been using the ghost parade and confusion footwork almost the entire time. In addition to other spiritual techniques, he had consumed nearly 30% of his spirit power in a short period of time. Since the time limit of this dungeon was an entire day, he could use his spirit power to quickly end the battle and then continue after recovering his spirit power. In less than a quarter of an hour, Leng Shiqi stood up. Then he walked across the stone bridge and came to a huge pillar. There was a circular platform on the side of the pillar. Lung Shiqi walked on the platform and came to the other side of the pillar. Behind the pillar, there was a green mark. Lung Shiqi reached out and touched the mark. Immediately, there was a rumbling sound. Lung Shiqi's expression did not change. He knew that he had triggered the mechanism to go up and down. Sure enough, the circular platform under Lung Shiqi's feet began to slowly descend. The further down he went, the darker the light became. It didn't take long for Lung Shiqi to reach the lowest point of the pillar. He raised his head and saw a huge dark bronze stone door that was 20 feet tall blocking his way. In the corner of the door, there was a weathered skeleton. Lung Shiqi didn't even look at the skeleton and walked straight to the stone door. He pressed his arms against the stone door and circulated his spiritual energy. The stone door was slowly pushed open and made a heavy sound. Behind the stone door was a deep corridor. There were several torches on the walls that had been burning for who knows how long, illuminating the surroundings. Lung Shiqi could see some strange patterns on the walls with the help of the light. When he walked to one of the patterns, he suddenly stopped. If I remember correctly, it should be here. As soon as he finished speaking, the wall on his right flashed with an extremely strange light. Then, a tall pig-headed monster jumped out of the mural. After the pig-headed monster jumped out, it roared a few times. When it saw Lung Shiqi, its two big eyes suddenly lit up with two green lights and disgusting saliva flowed out of its mouth. Pig badger! Lung Shiqi recognized this monster and felt the aura on its body. They're one monster beast. It was even stronger than a rank 1 monster. Lung Shiqi's expression became serious. He did not dare to be careless. He slowly pulled out the spirit sword on his back and his whole body was filled with battle intent. The real challenge had only just begun. Chapter 85. Unsheathing his spirit saber, Lung Shiqi was full of fighting spirit and took the initiative to attack. Lung Shiqi used Ghost Parade and Confusion Footwork at the same time. His speed was as fast as the wind as he circled behind the pig badger and slashed out with his saber. However, when the saber landed on the pig badger's body, it made a ding-ding-dang-dang sound. Only then did Lung Shiqi notice that the animal skin on the pig badger's body had almost formed a heavy armor. When the saber slashed down, it only shattered this layer of armor, causing a little green liquid to seep out of the pig badger's back. For the pig badger, this was not painful at all. Swoosh! The pig badger suddenly attacked, its sharp claws tearing through the air. Lung Shiqi quickly dodged and found that the pig badger's speed was about the same as a lynx's, so he immediately changed his strategy. Next, Lung Shiqi no longer faced the pig badger head-on. Instead, he relied on his movement technique to constantly circle around it, slashing whenever he had the opportunity. At the same time, he was also looking for the pig badger's weakness. Pucci, Lung Shiqi's saber slashed the pig badger's neck. He felt as if the saber had cut through a piece of soft meat, and he knew that the pig badger's weakness was at the back of its neck. He was slightly happy, but at this moment he suddenly saw the mural on the other side begin to squirm and flash with a strange light. Not good. Lung Shiqi's expression changed slightly. While dodging the pig badger's attack, he raised his hand and an earth wall rose from the ground to block the mural. Roar! Soon after, Lung Shiqi opened his mouth and let out a deafening roar. A formless sound wave shook the pig badger and stunned it. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lung Shiqi jumped high and a bright light shone on his spirit saber. Then he suddenly swung his saber and slashed out a dazzling saber aura. The saber aura slashed into the pig badger's neck and a large amount of green liquid burst out. However, when the saber aura was halfway in, it was embedded inside. More importantly, the pig badger was not dead yet. The earth wall on the other side began to crack. The pig badger let out a series of mournful screams, its arms flailing wildly. Lung Shiqi wanted to pull out the spirit saber, but when he tried, he found that he couldn't pull it out. At first, he was anxious, but then an idea flashed through his mind. With a thought, a heavy axe suddenly appeared in his other hand, while the spirit saber disappeared. He was using the system space to retrieve the spirit saber and summon the heavy axe. Lung Shiqi took the opportunity to grab the heavy axe with both hands, aimed at the huge wound, and swung it down fiercely. With a plop, the huge pig's head was chopped off and fell to the ground. Stinky green liquid spurted out like a column. However, Lung Shiqi wasn't in the mood to pay attention to this, because the earth wall next to him had already shattered, and a deer monster rushed out of it, bulldozer deer. As soon as the bull deer appeared, it locked onto Lung Shiqi and charged at him with its two large antlers. Facing the bull deer, Lung Shiqi wasn't in a hurry. He directly threw the heavy axe on the ground, making a clanging sound. He drew his sword with his right hand and pointed the tip of the sword, shooting out an invisible sword chi. The bull deer was similar to the pig badger. Its fur and hide formed a set of armor. However, the bull deer exposed many weaknesses. Its four limbs weren't protected by armor. The meridian unblocking sword chi directly pierced through the bull deer's thigh, leaving a bloody hole. At the same time, the sword chi entered its body and immediately blocked its meridians, hindering the flow of spirit energy. Monster beasts were powerful because they were born with powerful bodies that humans couldn't compare to. Furthermore, they were able to contain a lot of spirit energy. Just like humans, monster beasts had meridians in their bodies, and spirit energy flowed through their meridians. The only difference was that humans learned how to use spirit energy more flexibly and cleverly after learning cultivation techniques, while monster beasts only knew how to use spirit energy based on their instincts. Lung Shiqi's meridian unblocking sword chi not only had a strong penetrative power, it also blocked the meridians after entering the body, hindering the flow of spirit energy. If a spirit cultivator was hit by the meridian unblocking sword chi, they might be able to think of a way to bypass the meridians. However, monster beasts didn't have that kind of intelligence. The bull deer charged forward recklessly. The injury to its thigh didn't affect it much, but the meridian unblocking sword chi blocked the flow of spirit energy in its body. The bull deer immediately lost control of its body and fell to the ground. Lung Shiqi seized the opportunity and sent out several meridian unblocking sword chi to seal the bull deer's meridians. Without the support of spirit energy, monster beasts were only left with their bodies. Although they were still very strong, they weren't much of a threat to Lung Shiqi. Thus, Lung Shiqi tried his best to conserve his spirit energy and slowly killed the bull deer. After killing the pig badger and the bull deer, Lung Shiqi didn't let down his guard. He knew that the strongest monster in this corridor hadn't appeared yet. At the end of the corridor, there was a wall. On the wall, there was a carving of a monster that was neither human nor beast. The monster was sitting cross-legged with a blood-red bead in its hands. The moment the bull deer died, the carving suddenly lit up with a terrifying blood-red light. Especially the blood-red bead that was constantly twisting. Following that, a monster suddenly jumped out. Sharp-clawed wolf. The sharp-clawed wolf looked a little like a beast man. Its entire body was covered in light armor, and its 2-feet-long black claws extended from its claws. It looked abnormally terrifying. However, the aura on its body was even more terrifying. It could be said that it was the strongest rank 1 monster Lung Shiqi had ever seen. It was even stronger than the mutated monster from before. Lung Shiqi took a deep breath. He knew that this was a strong opponent. The moment the sharp-clawed wolf appeared, it raised its claws high. When its claws fell, the sharp-clawed wolf was already in front of Lung Shiqi. Shwa! The sharp-clawed wolf swung down, but it grabbed empty air. Lung Shiqi was already prepared when the sharp-clawed wolf made its move. He hurriedly teleported away. However, he was still shocked by the sharp-clawed wolf's speed. Its speed wasn't inferior to the mutated monster from before. The sharp-clawed wolf didn't hit its target, but it continued to attack. Its claws lit up with a faint blood-red light. Lung Shiqi didn't dare to take it head-on. He hurriedly used the confusion footwork to dodge. At the same time, a pulse unblocking sword chi shot out. The pulse unblocking sword chi only cut a small wound on the monster's body. The pulse unblocking sword chi entered the sharp-clawed wolf's body and blocked its spirit energy. Lung Shiqi's eyes narrowed. He pointed the tip of his sword at the sharp-clawed wolf and used the chaotic flower's dazzling eyes. The sharp-clawed wolf seemed to have some intelligence. It felt the threat and the blood-red light on its claws bloomed. Then its entire body spun rapidly. The blood-red light connected into a blood-red halo. Lung Shichi's chaotic flower's dazzling eyes sword light pierced the blood-red halo. There was a soft sound of metal clashing and dazzling sparks. After the chaotic flower's dazzling eyes move, only 2 pulse unblocking sword chi broke through the sharp-clawed wolf's defense and pierced into its body. Lung Shichi was shocked. His chaotic flower's dazzling eyes move was broken for the first time. And it was broken by a monster. Chapter 86. This was the first time that Lung Shichi's chaotic flower dazzling eyes was broken. Although he was shocked, he didn't slow down. The claws of the wolf could only defend its upper body. Lung Shichi immediately shot out a few Chongmai chakra sword chi and hit the wolf's legs. Puff, puff, puff. A few small wounds appeared on the wolf's legs. It stopped moving and its legs tightly grasped the ground. Its upper body was twisted to a terrifying angle. Its whole body was covered with a layer of blood. Lung Shichi's heart skipped a beat when he saw this. He recalled that this was the starting motion of the wolf claw's unique skill. Sure enough, after a breath, the wolf's figure suddenly disappeared. It was so fast that it only left a red light in the dim corridor. Swish! Lung Shichi tried his best to move out, but a large part of his clothes was still scratched by the wolf. It even left a few bloody marks on his left leg. However, Lung Shichi didn't dare to stop and continued to move because the wolf disappeared again. This time, Lung Shichi had a premonition. While moving, he waved his sword and made a ding sound. However, although he blocked the attack, his body was still smashed to the wall by the wolf's powerful force. At this time, the wolf jumped high and rushed towards Lung Shichi. Lung Shichi was not surprised. He turned around and ran along the wall. It was the chakra walk technique. Immediately, with a boom sound, the wolf blasted a big hole in the place where Lung Shichi was just. It waved its claws again, and a scarlet blood light burst out from its claws. With a wave, the blood light turned into 3 astral swords and quickly cut towards Lung Shichi. Lung Shichi controlled his spiritual power to move back and forth on the wall, narrowly avoiding the 2 astral swords. However, he couldn't avoid the last one. Lung Shichi hurriedly put away his sword and a sword suddenly appeared in his right hand. The battle saber overflowed with spiritual light as Lung Shichi slashed down, and a crescent-shaped saber light poured out. Ding 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 ding. The saber radiance and the saber aura collided head-on, and a dense sound of collision immediately rang out. Gradually, the blood-red saber aura became fainter and fainter. Finally, its power was exhausted and it dissipated. But Lung Shichi's blade was still there. The sharp claw wolf's legs had already been penetrated by the meridian-piercing sword chi, and the series of powerful attacks just now had consumed a lot of its physical strength and spiritual power. At this moment, it was already somewhat weak. Lung Shichi's spirit saber flashed with saber aura. He jumped down from the wall and slashed at the wolf with the sharp saber aura. The sharp claw wolf was in a weakened state, and its speed was much slower. There was no way it could dodge. The saber light instantly engulfed the wolf and chopped off one of its claws. Oh! The claw wolf howled. It was unknown whether it had recovered its strength or it was just a momentary lapse of consciousness. Its figure moved and ran away, just in time to avoid another strike from Lung Shichi. Seeing this, Lung Shichi made a prompt decision. The spirit saber in his hand directly chased after the sharp claw wolf. At the same time, Lung Shichi unsheathed his spirit sword. A black fog rose under his feet, and the sword stabbed out. 1 saber and 1 sword, 1 left and 1 right, attacked the sharp claw wolf almost at the same time. The sharp claw wolf waved its other claw and slapped the spirit saber away. At this moment, Lung Shichi came with his sword. Before the sword arrived, the sword aura arrived first. A ray of meridian-piercing sword chi tore open the light armor in front of the sharp claw wolf's heart. Just as Lung Shichi was about to stab it, Its speed suddenly increased. Rushing thunder soared. With a poochie sound, the spirit sword pierced the sharp claw wolf's heart. Immediately, several rays of sword aura surged out, wantonly strangling its flesh and internal organs. At the same time, it was strangling its vitality. Lung Shichi did not dare to neglect the sharp claw wolf. His left hand formed a fist, and the surging fist force was like riding the wind and breaking the waves as it fiercely smashed into the sharp claw wolf's heart. Tiger breaking 3 waves fist. The two forces, one bright and one dark, arrived and completely destroyed the sharp claw wolf's vitality. Lung Shichi pulled out his spirit sword, kicked the sharp claw wolf's corpse away, and then leaned against the wall, panting. A strong sense of exhaustion came from his body. The battle with the sharp claw wolf had consumed almost 80% of his spirit power. Not only that, but it had also forced him to use all of his trump cards. He had used Chaotic Flower's Dazzling Eyes, Waning Moon Rapid Light Slash, and Tiger Breaking 3 Waves Fist to barely kill this beast. It could be said that it had forced him to use all of his skills. It could be seen how terrifying this sharp claw wolf was. Lung Shichi hurriedly swallowed spirit recovery pills and healing pills. Then he picked up the spirit saber and heavy axe, and took out 2 spirit stones to meditate on the spot and began to recover his spirit power. After about an hour, Lung Shichi stopped. At this moment, he had recovered all of his spirit power. Unexpectedly, he found that the spirit power in his body was a bit purer. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Sure enough, only by constantly fighting could he improve faster. Then, he walked to the end of the long corridor and went around the wall where the sharp claw wolf had jumped out. Behind it was a narrow, secret passage that led upwards. Lung Shichi knew that this secret passage had a mechanism. As long as someone went in, the walls on both sides would be filled with dense spikes. He estimated that the secret passage was only a few hundred feet away. Immediately, he used the 100 Ghosts Nocturnal Walk enigmatic footwork and leaped into the secret passage. 2 seconds after Lung Shichi entered the secret passage, the walls on both sides began to shake. However, at this time, Lung Shichi was already halfway through. Kacha-kacha. The walls on both sides rose, revealing countless thick spikes inside. The spikes began to slowly pierce out. At this moment, Lung Shichi was already 70% of the way through. Boom boom boom, the 2 walls with countless spikes collided. If someone was inside, they would definitely die without a complete corpse. Unfortunately, at the moment they closed in, a figure leaped out. Lung Shichi looked at the sealed secret passage behind him and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. If he was a little slower, he would have stayed inside forever. Lung Shichi collected his thoughts and looked around. At this time, he was standing on the edge of a cliff. On the opposite side of the cliff was the ruins of an old palace. There were broken walls everywhere. There was a long broken suspension bridge between the cliffs. Lung Shichi carefully walked onto the suspension bridge. The suspension bridge immediately swayed. He quickly used his spirit power to stabilize himself. As he walked, Lung Shichi couldn't help but look down. He saw that it was all fog and he didn't know how deep it was. A black fog immediately rose from Lung Shichi's feet. He suddenly sped up and quickly crossed the suspension bridge. When he stepped on the ground of the ruins, he felt that he was on solid ground. However, he didn't continue to move forward. Instead, he narrowed his eyes. On the road to the palace, there was a dilapidated square. The square was full of collapsed stone pillars. On each of these broken pillars stood a statue. Upon closer inspection, they were all bat statues. However, these bats were half the height of a person. Lung Shichi picked up a few stones by his feet. After experiencing this dungeon, he naturally knew that these were not statues, but monsters, claw bats. Chapter 87. So, a small stone hit a bat statue. Immediately after, the bat sculpture began to crack, making a caw-caw sound. In the blink of an eye, a huge bat monster broke through the statue and flew out. It first circled in the air, and when it found Leng Shiqi, it immediately opened its claws and flew over. Rank 1 monster. Leng Shiqi felt the presence of the sharp claw bat from afar and his heart changed. Normal rank 1 monsters were nothing to Leng Shiqi, but looking around, there were at least 10 to 20 sharp claw bats in the square. Behind them were the more troublesome sound wave bats and the bat leader. And these bats all had the ability to fly. Although they were not very high, they were still a big problem for Leng Shiqi. This was not easy to pass, so he could only take it step by step. A sharp claw bat flew over. Leng Shiqi's spirit sword shook and shot out 2 streaks of unblocking pulse sword chi. The unblocking pulse sword chi directly pierced through the bat's wings and sealed its spirit energy. The bat suddenly fell down halfway. Leng Shiqi immediately rushed forward. With a sword in his right hand and a saber in his left, he quickly killed the bat. Leng Shiqi sensed the spirit chi in his body. Killing this ordinary sharp claw bat consumed nearly 20% of his spirit chi. In other words, he would have to stop to recover his spirit energy after killing 5 bats at most. This was destined to be a long battle. He muttered, "It's a bit troublesome." But if this idea spread out, he would definitely be beaten to death by many people. It had to be known that even the people at the 5th or 6th level of the pure spirit realm on the Blood Mist Island would barely be able to fight a single bat. Leng Shiqi only used 20% of his spirit energy to easily kill it, and he still looked unhappy. Troublesome was troublesome, but it was better than being surrounded and killed by a large group of rank 1 monsters. Next, Leng Shiqi steadily attracted one bat after another. When he ran out of spirit energy, he would recover it. Gradually, there were fewer and fewer statues in the square, and the Leng Shiqi's position became deeper and deeper. When the last sharp claw bat died under his sword, Leng Shiqi used the same trick again. He threw a stone to attract the sonic bats behind him. These sonic bats were different from the claw bats. They were smaller in size and did not have particularly sharp teeth or claws. However, it could emit a strange sound wave. In the game world, it only caused damage, but Leng Shiqi wasn't sure what effect it would have now. But in any case, he had to be more careful. However, to his surprise, even though the stone had only hit one sonic bat, several of the statues around it had already begun to crack. Even the bat leader that was about 10 feet tall was included. Oh no! Leng Shiqi knew something was wrong. Just as he was about to retreat, the bat leader and several sonic bats opened their ferocious mouths at the same time. Waves of silent, invisible sound waves filled the entire square. These sound waves clearly did not have any sound, but when they fell into his ears, Leng Shiqi's eardrums were torn apart. His brain also felt like it was being stabbed by needles. And those bats had already pounced on Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi forcibly endured the pain in his head. He opened his mouth wide and a huge sound wave also resounded through the square, immediately canceling out a portion of the sound waves. Using sound waves to fight sound waves. And Leng Shiqi's sound waves also made the bats dizzy. Other than the bat leader that could still fly in the air, the other sonic bats all fell to the ground. Leng Shiqi did not retreat at this time. Instead, he moved forward. His body suddenly turned into several phantoms, and with a sharp sword aura and invisible sword chi, he passed through the sonic bats. For a moment, the sword aura flashed and the sword chi was everywhere. More than half of those sonic bats died in an instant. At this moment, Leng Shiqi did not expect that he would actually complete the fusion of channel unblocking sword chi and chaotic blossoms gradually mesmerizing eyes while his mind was not clear. The power of chaotic blossoms gradually mesmerizing eyes, which was integrated with a rank 3 spiritual skill, instantly increased by several levels. But there was also bad news. Chaotic blossoms gradually mesmerizing eyes was indeed very strong, but the spiritual power consumed also increased dramatically. This move had consumed more than 30% of his spiritual energy. When Leng Shiqi had just broken through to the pure spirit realm, this move also consumed about 30% of his spiritual power. But now Leng Shiqi's cultivation was at the peak of the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. Although it was the same 30%, the difference was very big. Consuming so much spiritual power in an instant made Lung Shiqi feel a faint sense of exhaustion. At this time, the bat leader rapidly flapped its wings, but it did not fly over. Instead, it gradually gathered a strong wind in front of it. Lung Shiqi knew that it was not good. Suddenly, the bat leader spread its wings, and a huge gust of strong wind attacked. "Rise!" Lung Shiqi shouted in a low voice, and a thick earth wall suddenly rose in front of him. He tapped the wall with the tip of his foot and flew back. Unexpectedly, the seemingly thick earth wall did not even last 2 breaths of time before it shattered. Fortunately, Lung Shiqi had already used the confusion steps to move out. Even so, the side of his body was still a little bit blown by the strong wind, and he suddenly felt as if countless small knives were cutting his body, opening up dozens of small wounds. Hiss! Lung Shiqi secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. If I was hit directly, wouldn't it be the same as being executed by 1,000 cuts? After blowing out the strong wind, the bat leader's speed suddenly slowed down. Lung Shiqi's eyes lit up, and he put away his sword and a longbow appeared in his hand. It was the rank 2 spiritual weapon, Tendon Changing Bow. Lung Shiqi turned around, took out 3 arrows, and put them on the bowstring. At this time, the bat leader had already opened its claws and rushed over. Bang! Lung Shiqi shouted again, and then an earth pillar as thick as an arm suddenly drilled out of the ground, and hit the bat leader in the air. Although the earth pillar's attack was just a tickle to the bat leader, and only delayed it for a blink of an eye. However, in this blink of an eye, Lung Shiqi's 3 arrows were already shot out. The 3 arrows shot towards the bat leader in a triangular formation. Unfortunately, the bat leader's body was very big, but it was very agile. It kept twisting in the air, and cleverly dodged the 3 arrows. Then the bat leader rushed over again. But what it did not expect was that the 3 arrows that it dodged actually turned around in the air, and continued to shoot towards it. Pew pew pew! The 3 arrows hit the bat leader in a row, and the arrows were nailed to its back. Although the bat leader was also a rank 1 peak monster, its body was much weaker than the claw wolf. It immediately let out a silent roar, and its body swayed in the air. Lung Shiqi's expression was cold, and 2 more arrows appeared in his hand, and he shot the arrows in one breath. The 2 arrows pierced through the bat leader's wings, causing it to fall to the ground. In the next moment, the sword arrived. Chapter 88. After a while, Lung Shiqi adjusted himself after killing the strange bird leader and finally stepped into the last area. This was a circular space with a radius of several tens of feet. At the end, there was something that looked like a cage. Lung Shiqi channeled his spirit energy into his eyes and looked carefully. It was a round door with an unknown array engraved around it. However, the array was now dim. In the middle, there were a dozen thick iron pillars that seemed to be imprisoning something. This is the final battle. Lung Shiqi muttered. However, he did not continue to move forward because he knew that as long as he took another step, the final monster, the spiritual ruin beast king, would break free. Looking back at the monsters he had killed along the way, it was to prevent outsiders from entering and also to seal the spiritual ruin beast king. Now that all the monsters outside were killed by Lung Shiqi, the seal naturally no longer existed. According to Lung Shiqi's guess, the previous 2 elite monsters were peak rank 1 monsters. Then, how strong would the final boss be? The spiritual ruin beast king was probably a rank 2 monster. A rank 2 monster was equivalent to a spirit cultivator in the spirit transformation realm. It was even stronger than a normal spirit cultivator in the spirit transformation realm. Lung Shiqi had never seen a rank 2 monster before, let alone fight one. However, just killing the sharp claw wolves had already made him use all his strength. How would he face a rank 2 monster? Of course, Lung Shiqi was also prepared. Lung Shiqi took out the Tendon Changing Bow again. He did not use a normal arrow, but an arrow that was not an arrow from the system backpack. It was a 2-foot-long green cone. It was slightly thicker in the middle and thinner towards the sides. This was something that the Yushu clan found on Wu Qing after destroying the twin hero's hull. Rank 2 Spirit Weapon, Cloud-Piercing Shuttle. It was also a one-time use Rank 2 Spirit Weapon. Its lethality was extremely strong. At that time, Wuqing was ambushed by the Delta Origi and was instantly killed. He died before he could use this trump card. Otherwise, he would have had a chance to resist. In the end, this item fell into the hands of Leng Shiqi. Next, Leng Shiqi carefully placed one end of the cloud-piercing shuttle on the bowstring. He circulated his spirit force and the cloud-piercing shuttle immediately lit up with a faint green light. A sharp feeling came from it. This immediately increased Leng Shiqi's confidence. Then, Leng Shiqi continued to draw his bow and slowly moved forward. Roar. After Leng Shiqi took a few steps, a deafening roar resounded through the entire space. An abnormally tall demonic beast suddenly appeared behind the round door, but it was trapped by more than 10 iron pillars. However, the demonic beast stretched out its terrifyingly thick arms and grabbed the iron pillar. With a series of creaking sounds, the iron pillar was actually torn open by the demonic beast. Hong long long, the demonic beast suddenly leaped out, and its mountain-like body heavily smashed onto the ground, causing the surroundings to faintly tremble. Upon closer inspection, this demonic beast looked like a giant ape, similar to the ape-shaped puppet they encountered not long ago. However, this demonic beast's entire body was covered in a layer of thick and ferocious armor. Even its head was covered. It could be said that it was armed to the teeth. Only right above its abdomen was a fist-sized hole, the shape of which was exactly the same as the round door behind it. The demonic beast's aura was so strong that it was terrifying. Leng Shiqi could feel a heavy pressure on his shoulders even though he was standing far away. This was the final boss of the Spiritual Ruin instance, Rank 2 Demonic Beast, Spiritual Ruin Beast King. Roar, roar, roar. The Spiritual Ruin Beast King was freed and immediately roared excitedly. Waves of sound blew over, causing Leng Shiqi's clothes to flutter. Leng Shiqi could not help but narrow his eyes, and a shocking battle intent flashed in his eyes. The Spiritual Ruin Beast King waved its arms and continuously smashed its chest muscles. Leng Shiqi was constantly looking for an opportunity. Then, the Spiritual Ruin Beast King raised its arms high and opened its bloody mouth, not knowing what it was going to do. Opportunity! Leng Shiqi's eyes lit up. He loosened his numb right hand, and the cloud-piercing shuttle turned into a sharp green light and shot out. And its target was the hole in the middle of the Spiritual Ruin Beast King's body. Poochie, the cloud-piercing shuttle arrived in an instant. The Spiritual Ruin Beast King did not even have time to react before it pierced into the hole. The Spiritual Ruin Beast King's body froze. It definitely did not expect that it would be ambushed while it was still in the joy of being freed. A piercing pain instantly spread throughout its body. The Spiritual Ruin Beast King could not help but roar. Its bloody eyes opened wide and stared at Leng Shiqi. Then, it opened its bloody mouth and was about to pounce over and tear Leng Shiqi into pieces. But Leng Shiqi's expression did not change. He put away the tendon-changing bow, opened his left hand, and softly said a word, "Explode!" Boom. Then, the cloud-piercing shuttle that pierced into the hole in the Spiritual Ruin Beast King's body suddenly exploded. Suddenly, a large amount of viscous blood mixed with pieces of internal organs spewed out from the hole in the Spiritual Ruin Beast King's body and mouth. Before they even fought, the Spiritual Ruin Beast King was already injured. And it was an internal injury. Even so, Leng Shiqi did not dare to let his guard down. This was because the Spiritual Ruin Beast King was charging towards them like a moving mountain. The Spiritual Ruin Beast King had not even gotten close, but the heat wave came first. Leng Shiqi immediately used Ghost Parade and Confusion Steps to dodge. But unexpectedly, the Spiritual Ruin Beast King suddenly jumped up and smashed towards where Leng Shiqi was. Boom! With a sound, a 2-chi deep hole appeared on the ground. And Leng Shiqi's figure was long gone. Right now, Leng Shiqi was actually behind the Spiritual Ruin Beast King. Leng Shiqi held the sword hilt and unsheathed it. The moment it was unsheathed, it lit up with a dazzling sword light and fiercely stood on the Spiritual Ruin Beast King's tail. The only part of the spiritual ruin beast king's body that was exposed outside of its armor was its tail. The sword light slashed on the thick tail, but to Leng Shiqi's surprise, this gale cut only cut halfway and did not cut off the spiritual ruin beast king's tail. The spiritual ruin beast king had already reacted. It suddenly swung its tail and directly slapped Leng Shiqi away. Leng Shiqi's body slammed onto the ground and slid far away. The blood in his body was in turmoil, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. What a strong physical body! Leng Shiqi exclaimed to himself. That gale cut was a level 2 spiritual technique at the perfection stage. It was very powerful, and Leng Shiqi was very comfortable using it. And his sword was also a level 3 spiritual weapon. Even so, it could not cut off the spiritual ruin beast king's tail. He really did not expect a level 2 monster's physical body to be so strong. But Leng Shiqi immediately stopped thinking about it. He still had a trace of confidence because he still had a trump card that he had not used. He might be able to kill this spiritual ruin beast king. The battle intent in his eyes increased. Chapter 90. The spiritual ruin beast king's tail was able to injure Leng Shiqi. Fortunately, his body was quite strong, otherwise his flesh would have been torn apart. A rank 2 monster was on a completely different level from a rank 1 monster. Whether it was strength, defense, or speed, they were all much stronger than a rank 1 monster. In fact, he even gained a bit of intelligence. When the spiritual ruin beast king saw Leng Shiqi fall to the ground, it raised its arms above its head and slammed them into the ground. But the strange thing was, even though it slammed down with such a heavy fist, the ground was not damaged at all. Leng Shiqi's eyes widened as if he thought of something. He immediately slapped the ground with one hand and his body stood up. Then he jumped high into the air. At this time, with the spiritual ruin beast king as the center, the ground around it began to tremble violently. A terrifying wave of spirit power burst out. Instantly, the ground cracked and rocks flew everywhere. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi realized what the spiritual ruin beast king was going to do and jumped into the air. But what he did not expect was that the spiritual ruin beast king grabbed with both hands and pulled out a huge rock from the ground. It suddenly threw it out and smashed towards Leng Shiqi, who was still in midair. Leng Shiqi's expression changed, but he quickly calmed down. He stretched out his left hand and used the wind slash with his right hand. But this time, the wind slash easily cut the rock that was taller than him in half as if it was tofu. It was Leng Shiqi who used the hand of earth to soften the rock and cut it in half. Then, Leng Shiqi finally landed. The moment he landed, he took out the tendon-changing bow and shot 3 arrows. Facing these 3 arrows, the spiritual ruin beast king did not even dodge and continued to charge at Leng Shiqi. The 3 arrows hit the spiritual ruin beast king's armor and were deflected. They could not move an inch. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi's heart sank. Since the sneak attack failed and ranged attacks failed, he could only fight in close range. Leng Shiqi immediately used Ghost Parade and Confusion Footwork at the same time, constantly dodging the attacks of the spiritual ruin beast king. Every punch from the spiritual ruin beast king created a huge crater in the ground. Leng Shiqi could not take a single hit and could only keep dodging. Every time he had the chance, his spirit weapon could only scratch the spiritual ruin beast king's armor and could not hurt it at all. Slowly, the spiritual energy of the Leng Shiqi became less and less, and the speed slowed down. Finally, Leng Shiqi's reaction was a beat too slow. The spiritual ruin beast king's huge fist landed in front of him. Leng Shiqi only had time to release an earth wall, but this earth wall was instantly shattered like paper. The Beast King's fist landed squarely on Leng Shiqi's body. Pooh! Leng Shiqi was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. Blood splattered all over the ground. He fell heavily on the ground. His entire body felt like it was falling apart. Not only that, the spiritual energy in his body was also in chaos. Just this one attack instantly caused Leng Shiqi to be heavily injured. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi used the cloud-piercing shuttle to injure the spiritual ruin beast king from the start. He also cultivated a body refinement technique. Otherwise, this punch from the spiritual ruin beast king would have taken his life. This was a rank 2 demon beast. Leng Shiqi could not help but feel a sense of helplessness. You might not be able to break its defense even if you slashed it 10 times. One punch from it would take away half of your life. How could you fight it? But now, Leng Shiqi had no way out. He wanted to run, but there was nowhere to run. The only way to survive was to fight. Fight with his life. Leng Shiqi's heart moved, and a blood-colored pill appeared in his palm. Right now, his expression was very complicated. There was heartache, viciousness, madness, and also hope. The pill in his hand was a rank 4 pill, blood explosion pill. Seeing that the spiritual ruin beast king was about to attack again, Leng Shiqi did not hesitate and swallowed the blood explosion pill. In the next moment, Leng Shiqi immediately felt the spiritual energy and blood in his body begin to boil. Waves of powerful energy filled his body. He could not even feel the pain from his injury. Leng Shiqi suddenly shouted. His body emitted a faint blood glow. It was somewhat similar to Zhang Zhiga, but Leng Shiqi's blood glow was more vigorous. Power! 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 It was as if endless power was constantly surging in Leng Shiqi's body. Even his face was a little distorted, and a layer of red light appeared in his eyes. The spiritual ruin beast king did not care about Leng Shiqi. It punched again. Leng Shiqi did not dodge this time. He also punched. This punch was incomparably ferocious. It was as if a ferocious tiger was treading on the waves, directly attacking the waves. At this critical moment he finally merged the wave-breaking fist, tiger-roaring fist, and triple-fold palm together. It became the tiger wave-stepping fist. When the two fists met, a terrifying shockwave exploded. With Leng Shiqi and the spiritual ruin beast king as the center, the ground cracked and even sank a few inches. The scene of the two fists meeting was a little strange. But what was even stranger and more surprising was that Leng Shiqi did not even take half a step back. The moment he punched out, he finally completely fused the three waves tiger break fist. One yin and one yang, one bright and one dark, the two forces perfectly fused together and forcefully blocked the spiritual ruin beast king's punch. And his feet only sank into the ground. It was a world of difference compared to before. As for the spiritual ruin beast king's armor, there were several large cracks. And a surge of internal force ignored the surface defense and entered its palm, destroying its internal meridians and flesh. But at this moment, Leng Shiqi still felt power surging out of his body. He actually felt like he was going to explode. He could not wait to release this power. Ah! He roared and attacked. He punched again. It was still the tiger wave-stepping fist. The spiritual ruin beast king was stunned at first. With its intelligence, it could not understand how a weak insect could suddenly become so strong. But out of its violent instincts, the spiritual ruin beast king still punched back. Boom, 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 boom. One man and one beast just stood there and punched at each other. The ground around them had already sunk more than a foot deep because of the impact. The armor on the spiritual ruin beast king's fists were completely shattered and its fists were covered in blood. Leng Shiqi was not in a good state either. His fists were a bloody mess. No matter how strong he was, the strength of his body did not change. If this continued, Leng Shiqi's arms would be broken sooner or later. The pain seemed to make Leng Shiqi regain some consciousness. His eyes flashed and a red light flashed. He instantly appeared behind the spiritual ruin beast king. With a zing sound, the spirit blade was unsheathed. The blade drew a beautiful crescent blood-colored blade ray. The blood-red blade aura instantly cut through the spiritual ruin beast king's thigh, destroying the armor on it as easily as breaking rotten wood. The blade aura cut deeply into the flesh. The spiritual ruin beast king immediately staggered and lost its balance. Using this opportunity, Leng Shiqi swung out another blade ray and directly cut off the spiritual ruin beast king's tail. Chapter 91. Leng Shiqi cut off the spiritual ruin beast king's tail in one strike. The tail was the key to a monster's balance. The sudden loss of its tail caused the spiritual ruin beast king to lose its balance and fall heavily to the ground. The spiritual ruin beast king couldn't help but cry out in pain. However, the brutality in its two blood-red eyes became even stronger. It opened its bloody mouth and specks of blood quickly gathered in its mouth. Leng Shiqi's expression changed when he saw this. He quickly retreated and with a thought, 3 thick earth walls rose up from the ground. The moment the earth walls rose up, a pillar of red light shot out from the spiritual ruin beast king's mouth. The 3 earthen walls were instantly submerged by the red light as if they were nothing. At this moment, Leng Shiqi had already teleported far away. Unexpectedly, the spiritual ruin beast king turned its head and controlled the red beam of light to sweep towards Leng Shiqi. Wherever it passed, the earth and rocks would fly and become a mess. Leng Shiqi immediately moved and used the ghost parade and confusion steps to the extreme. He teleported a dozen times and flashed to the side of the spiritual ruin beast king. Then he jumped high and landed on the spiritual ruin beast king's head. Then he slammed his fists down. Boom boom, bang. Leng Shiqi's fists slammed into the spiritual ruin beast king's head. The two forces, one light and one dark, tore apart its helmet and destroyed the insides of its head. At the same time, this power caused the spiritual ruin beast king to involuntarily close its mouth. The red beam of light instantly stopped, and instead, there was a series of explosions coming from its mouth. There was even the smell of something burning coming from it. Roar, roar, roar. The spiritual ruin beast king roared into the sky as it waved its arms wildly. Leng Shiqi quickly jumped up from its head. While dodging the attack, he twisted his body in the air and a silver spear appeared in his hand. In mid-air, the Leng Shiqi swung his spear and drew a huge bloody cross in the air. Immediately after, the silver spear tip exploded with a piercing blood-red light. Leng Shiqi's right arm bulged as he used all of his strength to shoot out the silver spear. This was the heavy kill cross spear. The silver spear shot out with a bloody cross and pierced into the spiritual ruin beast king's bloody mouth. The mouth was definitely the weakest. The silver spear directly pierced through the spiritual ruin beast king's head and nailed the spiritual ruin beast king to the ground. At this time, Leng Shiqi suddenly felt a surge of exhaustion in his body, and he accidentally fell from the sky. Leng Shiqi felt the explosive power in his body disappear as quickly as it came. At this moment, it was receding like the tide. Leng Shiqi turned his head to look at the dying spiritual ruin beast king not far away. He knew that he had to end the battle quickly. Immediately, a vicious look flashed across his eyes. Leng Shiqi quickly arrived in front of the spiritual ruin beast king. With a shake of his spirit sword, dozens of channel-opening sword chi entered the spiritual ruin beast king's mouth. The invisible sword chi immediately killed its life force. Leng Shiqi was still not at ease. He reached out his left hand and a fiery red bead appeared in his palm. He threw the bead into the hole in the spiritual ruin beast king's body and then immediately retreated. Just as Leng Shiqi retreated dozens of feet, there was a loud boom from the hole in the spiritual ruin beast king. Large flames burst out and completely engulfed the spiritual ruin beast king. This was Leng Shiqi's last trump card, Fire Bead. Huff huff. At this moment, Leng Shiqi felt like his body was hollowed out as he panted heavily. His body's strength was quickly fading. He couldn't even hold his weapon and it fell to the ground. In the end, Leng Shiqi didn't even have the strength to stand and sat on the ground. Leng Shiqi's eyes were locked on the spiritual ruin beast king. Although it was lying on the ground motionless, Leng Shiqi still had a question in his heart. Is it dead? If the spiritual ruin beast king didn't die like this, then Leng Shiqi had to admit defeat. Just as Leng Shiqi's heart was beating like a drum, someone seemed to know his question and came to answer it for him. A light blue door suddenly appeared beside Leng Shiqi, and a platform rose up from the center of the ground. A silver-white box was placed on top of the platform. A line of words that only Leng Shiqi could see appeared in front of him. Congratulations, host, for passing the spiritual ruin instance. Completion rate 100%. Please check your reward. Seeing this line of words, Lung Shichi could finally confirm that the spiritual ruin beast king was indeed dead. The huge rock in his heart finally fell to the ground. He simply laid down on the ground, facing upwards to form a big shape. The pale Lung Shichi panted heavily and even coughed violently a few times. Every time he coughed out a bit of blood. He looked inside himself and found that more than 50% of his meridians were damaged. The most serious ones were almost broken. Other than that, there were wounds of varying depths all over his body. Especially his hands, they were a bloody mess. The spiritual chi in his body had been completely depleted. Ever since Lung Shichi came to this world and came to Blood Mist Island, he had never suffered such serious injuries. But at the same time, he had never fought to his heart's content. At this moment, Lung Shichi suddenly laughed. At first, his laughter was very soft, but it gradually became louder and louder. He didn't even stop when he accidentally aggravated his injuries. Rank 2 monster, that was a rank 2 monster. It finally died at his hands. Lung Shichi had a majestic feeling in his heart that needed to be expressed. After a while, Lung Shichi finally calmed down. He didn't rush to open the treasure chest and leave. Instead, he sat down and swallowed a few pills. Then he took out spirit stones to recover his spirit chi. The instance had a time limit of 1 day. Lung Shichi estimated that 6 to 8 hours had passed. He still had a lot of time to do one thing. Lung Shichi sat for a full 2 hours. At this moment, Lung Shichi opened his eyes. There was a helpless look in his eyes. He smiled bitterly. I didn't expect my internal injuries to be so serious. Many of his meridians were damaged. His spirit chi recovered abnormally slowly. And right now, he could only recover about 70% of his spirit chi. Other than that, Lung Shichi's face was still pale. His spirit chi could be quickly recovered with pills and spirit stones, but his blood chi could only be slowly recovered. Lung Shichi shook his head and stood up. He walked to the huge corpse of the spiritual ruin beast king and pulled out the silver spear. However, there were several dents on the tip of the spear. It was obvious that it had been scrapped. Lung Shichi did a rough calculation. He had lost the cloud-piercing shuttle, the silver spear, and the explosive bead in this instance. What made his heart ache the most was the rank 4 blood explosion pill. He helplessly said to himself, I lost so much this time. I don't know if the reward can make up for it. But before that, I should collect some interest. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.